All right, we're going international on this episode. I'm bringing in my guest from Canada, and yes, I had to pay a tariff on this. Today, I'll be joined by our guest, Bill Van Veghel, on this episode of the Scho-Zone. All right, everybody, welcome to the Scho-Zone. I am your host, Ryan Schofield. I am not live. I'm just back in the DeGen. I'm actually doing this as a recorded episode. And as I like to say, we got a guest on. I'm looking forward to chatting with him. I was having a good time chatting before he got on here. And as I can say, I feel comfortable doing this one. When I go with my guests, we don't spit on it. We don't lube it up. We just get right into it. So I am joined by my guest, Bill Van Veghel. Bill, welcome to the Scho-Zone. Thank you for joining me.
Oh, thank you. I love coming to high energy. I see there's sports around. I see we have some commonalities. This is going to be a heck of a good time.
Absolutely, yeah. And this is where, the whole thing was we just kind of said, hey, let's just, we want to talk about your podcasts. And we'll talk about podcasting in general. Obviously, it seems like we have a similar background in the game a little bit. And then we just see where it goes. I mean, that's, spontaneous fun is always the most fun. It's kind of like.
You have what I call a loose structure.
Yeah.
And then you just kind of see where it leads.
Well, it's kind of like, I always think of back in the day, like, some of the best times me and my friends ever had were where it just randomly came about. And then the worst thing that ever happened was when we tried to recreate that good time. Like, oh, we should do something like that again. And then it's just never what it's meant to be. But, you just kind of go and you never know. It's just like what I do with the podcasting thing is that, something we discussed. And if I say, one more time, I'm going to slap myself. That's something I'll do. But I'm somebody who used to be, and as you kind of discussed, which if you don't want to discuss too much about it, I used to have a real heavy drinking problem, used to be a very big social drinker. I can do without the alcohol now, but what I miss is the interactions with somebody I would be talking to for no other reason than I'm in the same space as them. So we both exist in the podcast space. I think I saw your post on there. We checked it out for a second. I'm like, all right, clicks. So here I am. Here you are.
Perfect. Yeah. And I mean, we can get into my drinking later in the episode. If it evolves that way, I have no problem. I've told it on my own podcast, so it's not a big deal. But, open it up with whatever's on the top of your head.
Well, I mean, as I always went on is that, we will maybe talk about at some point is that I always thought that when I was drinking, the best conversations I had with people who were drinking. And now that I don't drink, my best conversations with people I had that don't drink anymore as well.
Well, it's funny, though, because after I quit drinking, you go into the bar as a sober person. And you always did walking into the bar sober most times. But eventually you didn't. And you go in as a sober person walking in the bar and you go, God, this place smells. The floor is sticky. You don't have any elbow room. But when you're there for the social part of drinking, that's what you're there for. And to this day, I'm still a social person. I just decided not to drink.
Right. And I mean, well, it sounds like that you had a little bit of a better go of it than I did. Me, it was getting very, very, well, we can talk more of that, but I always, remembered, you're Canadian, correct? That's where you go there. You're up in Canada.
Born, bred, and born here.
Which I'm going to be interested in here about what the differences are of growing up. I mean, it's just, you're not that far from me. It's not like you grow up a world away from me. It's just
we're roughly 2 hours, 2.5 hours.
Right. So, I mean, you're like, I'm actually so Montreal would be, or Quebec would be my northern province now. I'm in the capital region.
All right. So if you're south of Montreal, that's about 6 hours.
Okay. Yeah. So, but I mean, like ultimately there are people that live in this same country that I do that are much, much further away. I've taken flights that are that long to get places that are in my same,
Well, which is funny when I tell people I'm from Ontario, right? And they'll say, oh, okay, I hear Canada's big. Yeah. I can drive northward for 24 hours to the point where there's no roads if I really wanted to.
Are there even people?
No, scientists and loggers. That's about who's the only people up there.
and then they're just trying to study, if there's any chance that life can possibly survive up there. Which
well, they're checking temperatures. They're making sure for weird diseases or new animals, or they're logging wood from way up north. Yeah.
But, I always remember, I'm big on comedians. That was actually, how I got into podcasting is I was actually a comedian at one point in time. But two comedian quotes I always remember is one was Louis C.K. back when we could actually talk about him openly. But, he's still had some good bits and some good genius. He did his show Horace and Pete, and he always described the bar as it's a place where lonely people go to pretend they're not lonely kind of thing. And that one always really struck with me because I lived across the street from the bar. I could very easily just go home and sit there and anything I was watching and do, but it's like, oh, but across the street, there's people. Wonder what they're up to, kind of thing. What's, what kind of madness can we get ourselves into? And the other, probably one of my favorite comedians of all time, and literally just the comedian's comedian, who is a fellow Canadian, is Norm Macdonald.
Norm, I love Norm.
If you don't, that's really my litmus test with people is that if you like Norm, we can be friends. If you like, I literally have this test I've yet to see failed. If you have seen the movie Dirty Work, the chances are I can go on a long flight with you. We can chat the entire time. That's
did you watch the TV show?
Oh, the Norm Show. I'm probably one of like 5 people that has the box set of it.
Now, can you tell me the name of the band that did the opening song
for the Norm Show?
Yep.
I do not know that. That would be a good. You got me stumped already.
Canadian band Doug and the Slugs.
Doug and the Slugs. Okay, was probably a Norm favorite, I'd imagine.
I'd imagine it wasn't one of their bigger songs, but like it was pretty obscure. I was like, really?
Yeah.
And it got played on CBS or whatever it was.
I saw you vibe into my song there. That's by a Rochester band called the Isotopes, who, funny enough, when I first started podcasting, which I guess I'll use that as my little segue to transition to this. When I first started podcasting, which was about maybe a decade, maybe a little longer ago. Actually, it was almost 15 years ago. I had a show and they were a band that was kind of like loose there. And when I started doing a podcast of my own, because there was a lot of things that happened in between then and now, I remember I reached out to the band. I was like, hey, I used to use your song on this one thing. And they were like, they had no idea what song I was talking about. And they were like, if you find it, go ahead and use it. So then I found it. And like the guy was like, I forgot all about that song. I'm like, I fucking love that song.
But they obviously didn't play it in concert that often.
It's, they do a lot of their mixes that they kind of do a lot of strange covers, I think, or that's what they do a lot of. But they also have been a band for a while and they do enough stuff that, you have, when you have hundreds of songs, it's kind of like when I did comedy, sometimes someone would tell me, oh, I love that joke of yours where you did this. And I'm like, holy fuck, I haven't thought about that joke in forever. I'm like, That was a good one. Are you sure I wrote that? Are you sure that was me?
I said that in 2009 at a club in Schenectady.
Oh, yeah, no, well, I never would do it. Or were you saying yourself or me?
No, you.
Oh, me, yeah, no, well, Schenectady, yeah, that's right. I'm right in that neck of the woods right now.
Yeah, that's why I said that, you went to Gates Chili,
Oh, wow, no, Gates Chili's Rochester, but yeah, your shit there. I mean, I just know.
Well, growing up, we'd get the Canadian news, then we'd get Irv Weinstein on WKBW.
Okay.
And that was Buffalo news, and we get the Rochester channel and we get the Buffalo channel.
Okay.
So every year when they lost in the Super Bowl, I always got to kick because then there would be fires in, wherever it was in somewhere around Buffalo. There'd be some fuck because all the houses were old and made of wood, and so whenever they'd lose a Super Bowl, somebody would shoot a gun and then be a fire and then.
Yeah, that sounds about right. I mean, it's one of those of that like Buffalo. I have a soft spot for them now. Like when I actually lived out in the Western New York area, I found the whole Bills thing to be a little bit unbearable.
It's fire in Lackawanna or something. Yeah,
basically. I mean, because I don't know what there's a weird part. I remember someone saying this once upon a time, and I got in an argument with them about it. This was during hockey season with the Sabres, and they were saying secretly Bills fans don't want to win the Super Bowl, or they don't want to win a title. Or Buffalo sports fans actually don't want to win. Their identity is in the losing. And I remember thinking that was, no, that's not the way that is. But then as somebody who's involved in the world of gambling sometimes, there is the whole thing of that, like a real problem gambler is somebody who secretly wants to lose it all. And I've kind of found
I mean, you had to deal with that. And then you had the Dominic Hasek foot in the crease. Like they're just, they're cursed.
The fact that they've lost their sports. I mean, there's a theory I have. I mean, I can't rule out on this one, but because that, the city of Buffalo was built on a Native American, ground, that maybe there's something there with the curses that are kind of going there. I mean, put it this way. Every time they lose, there is something that's not just like a regular loss. There's something extra attached to it. So maybe there is something to that.
Yeah. There's the Motor City Miracle or there's some kind of
Music City Miracle. That was the Tennessee. I mean,
Rob Johnson.
Yes. The wide rights with the, with the field goal in the Super Bowl there, or even, now the new thing coming on is that every time they lose to the Chiefs, they change the rule, which may have made it that they would have beat the Chiefs. That's kind of a new thing, and it's, it is what it is, but they keep things fun. They keep things entertaining, but yeah. So I did podcasting a while back, it was kind of just, I was on a show with people that was a bunch of comedians and everyone trying to get their word in. And I've kind of always had that, back to the Norm thing. I was always heavily inspired by like Artie Lang type guys, the guys that just jumped in with that quick one-liner and stuff. And it turned into where I was talking over people a bunch. And eventually they gave me my own show. Bunch of stuff happened. Obviously I was out of control for a while there. And then once I started kind of sobering up a couple of years ago, eventually I had people go like, oh, why don't you do it? Why don't you do it? And for my sake, it was just always just like, I don't know how to do any of this shit. I always had someone doing it for me. And I really, really look for reasons to not feel dumb anymore or frustrate myself unless there's a paycheck associated. And finally just kind of use this as my way to kind of get going into it. And I kind of like that, I just even learned something from you talking before we went on here, so you host, you're part of two podcasts. You have one that you do on your own, which is music, movies, sports, and stuff, which, I thought was just not, like, oh, wow, just couldn't think of a title. So we just threw that together. But then I found out that there's actually some secret genius behind that title.
There's a reason for it, because I used to be occasionally a guest on and good friends with the people that ran a podcast called Horror Movie Podcast. And you think, Horror Movie Podcast, what kind of a dumb name? Not dumb, because when somebody types in the search bar, horror podcasts, it comes up first. So then I thought, what do I love other than my daughter and my wife? Music, movies, sports, and stuff. Stuff could be whatever I didn't, And so if somebody wants a sports podcast, it'll come up. If they want a music podcast, it'll come up. So it's not necessarily the geniusness so much as other people's laziness may get me listeners.
I know that, but that's the name of the game. That's one of the more frustrating things I have found in the podcast game. Here I am. My name is Ryan Schofield. I thought the Scho-Zone, kind of a play off the Ozone was like a little bit of a cool thing, but I don't even get matches when I search my own podcast because I'll get the School Zone and stuff of those natures, like close spellings out of there. So that's tough. So you may have just motivated me to rebrand things a little bit.
Which is funny because I see a lot of people, I'm in the podcast groups on Facebook and they've got these amazing names, but it doesn't tell me a damn thing about what they do, what the podcast is about. And if I'm sitting there having a smoke and I want 10 minutes to listen to a podcast, I don't want to have to figure out what I'm listening to.
You've been my best guest so far. You've taught me more about podcasting in the past 10 minutes than I did in the past 10 years. So.
So when I'm looking for fantasy football, I'll go to CBS Fantasy Today. Like, why call it some highfalutin name that by that I'm halfway done my joint? Whatever.
Right. And the other thing too is if I put with Ryan Schofield, well, who the fuck is Ryan Schofield?
That's it. That's it. But if you put the Scho Show Sports Channel, you'll get more clicks. Or if you said the Scho Show Music and More, then you'd get those clicks. But if somebody types in Paul Schofield, do they mean Paul Schofield, the actor? Like,
well, I would hope that they would be looking for somebody else. I'm Ryan, but
whatever.
I get you. Yeah. No.
Yeah. So if you're just doing, like, to me, it was just, I am not the most creative. If I want creativity, I'll get my wife and she'll go on Pinterest and she'll find something on ChatGPT or whatever. Me, I just want basic simplicity. And that's what I did. For my logo, I just went to all the free print makers that do the designs, the logo makers, and whichever one I like best, that's the one I chose.
Keeping it simple is the way to go sometimes. Less can be more. That's always kind of I've been struggling with, and that's kind of why I'm taking a breath on this one, with everything I've got going on in my life at the moment. I'm waiting to do like a reset before I really start getting my teeth back into this a little bit more. And that's what I need to do is kind of focus on just being good at one thing. And the idea of getting, noticed, sports, I can't tell you how many times, I cringe a lot of the times at some of those groups, and we're probably part of some of the same groups. That's where we found each other. But some people, we're not that. There's a couple of the groups of people that it's like a couple guys talking sports, and it's like, that is a million fucking different people. What makes you so much different and better? And, really being able to catch in with somebody is the big to do with that one. So yeah, no, that's definitely
yeah. And the thing is, there are some people it doesn't frustrate me because that's what those groups are for. But sometimes somebody will post and say something like, how do I get started? Well, that's a pretty involved process to answer in a reply on Facebook, you know.
Well, I think that some of my frustration, I even ranted about this on a previous episode, is that I had some people that had a bit of an ego about themselves. And there's some people that I know, I just let them be. I let them do their thing. You know, it doesn't bother me. It doesn't hurt me. But there are some people that make their show seem a little bit bigger than it really is, you know, or they like to fudge their success levels, you know, is where it's like,
and in reality, they have 75 listeners, which is fine.
Right. That's more than I have.
Yeah. But at the same time, don't make yourself to be Johnny Carson when you're on local access TV.
I saw one person that I had a bad interaction with that I saw giving advice to somebody, and I wanted to be like, don't listen to this guy, but I just let it be. But it's ultimately like, you know, with, you know, especially when we get to the point where I have you on the show, like I didn't pitch this to you, like, oh, I've got this big wide following and stuff.
No.
But you know, it's like people that golf, like there's people that everyone's a great golfer at the bar, and then they get on the course and it's just like, you know, let me guess, rough day, right? But it's like, you know, like you can tell whether someone maybe was ever actually good at all, or if it is a bad day kind of thing.
I always approach golf as a hockey player. Just whack the shit out of it and see where it goes.
I mean, that's really the one thing is that I'd like, you know, bring testosterone to the golf course, which is really not the place to be for it. And that's just why, you know, I don't have the time to hate myself anymore like I used to. You know, once upon a time, I had all the time in the world to do that. But now I don't think
I eventually just gave up. I was like, I mean, it's not that I ever thought I was going to be any good, but after a while, I'm like, I can just do this. I can go right to the bar. Why am I golfing?
Right. There is something too where, I mean, I would look at it as that sometimes it's a good way if, you know, if you're with the right people or something like that, you know, it can be a great way to kill some time because ultimately, you know, when I was in the Rochester area, it was cheap to play golf. So, or was once upon a time cheap to play golf. So it's like, hey, like this is going to save us money if we just only come out here and bring a 6-pack and spend 3 hours on a $25 round of golf. Because if we went anywhere else, that's going to be way more expensive than $25. Like,
yeah, it's a minimum $200 night. Whereas this one, you got, you know, $50 you're at the door.
Something to go from it. And then, you know, you always have that, you know, feelings that we, you know, and I guess podcasting and golf can be the same as that anybody can have something that seems professional quality in a long enough sample size.
I mean, as we speak, I'm still learning how to edit. And it's a work in progress and it's not easy. I mean, to some people, like my daughter who's 10 is ahead of me in some of this tech stuff because to them, they grew up with it.
Yeah.
Whereas I'm an elementary school teacher and I tell the kids when I was in grade 4, we used to have computers wheeled into our room from the school board that you get for a week. And then they got wheeled off to the next class.
Yeah, I remember when even think of what the adults thing is that I remember when I was like in 3rd grade or so. So I'm turning 40 this year. So this was probably sometime around like 94 or something like that, where we actually had like an international student that was, you know, in 5th grade or so. He was the one that was showing the teachers how to use the computer. And I remember when the home computer became a thing, I was like a whiz kid because I could, you know how to do some of these things, but you take a little bit of time off on something and holy shit, this it all pass you by.
Well, no kidding. It's funny. There was a meme going around a while back about what was your high school email address? I mean, let's laugh at it. There was no email when I was in high school. I never did any email until 1996 in my 3rd year of university. And it was only because a professor said, you need to put it in this way. So to me, when I went to university, it was on a word processor, which had like that 1-inch screen. And then you fed the paper in like a typewriter and it manually typed it up.
I had one of those, the Brother, I think it was called.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
It's like a gray thing. And it was heavy as shit.
I just love the idea. Like just literally me just being able to type words down was cool. Like, I mean, like back when I, you know, had creativity, which has really been something too that is kind of taken away from people, is that you mentioned all these, you know, computers and, you know, obviously smartphones and all these things. A big theory I've always had is that we have lost, I mean, creativity has taken on a new form now, but like pure creativity has been lost because you know how hard it is to be bored now?
Well, that's the thing. Like I say to my daughter, I say, go outside and play. When I was in the mid 80s, my dad would say, go, and then come back when the lights come on.
That was an order.
Yeah, go. You know, come in to eat if you got to go to the washroom, if you hurt yourself, whatever. But otherwise, you just went out and played. And I was the white kid in my neighborhood where everyone else was Italian.
Okay.
So, I was
so I mean, they kind of are white too, I guess.
Well, yeah, but I was not olive skinned.
Yeah.
So I was the munja cake. I was the munja cake. I was the one that, but anyways, we would play road hockey, we'd play football, we'd play at the park, we'd go swimming. I mean, I'm not going to say it's idealistic because I'm not going to romanticize. There's issues in the 80s as much as now, but you do get the chance to go out. I saw a clip the other day, and I don't know, was it in California maybe, where there's kids that are like 21, 22 taking courses in how to use a phone. Because nowadays everything's a quick text. Well, some of these kids that are 21 don't know how to call to make a dentist appointment, or how to your daughter gets invited to a birthday party. How do you RSVP? Like, there's a whole generation that doesn't have that skill set.
I started seeing that one coming because I stayed living in a college town for a long time, and I started noticing as time went on, and like I was, with that guy I was the guy that became like a hybrid townie, but I still hung out with college girls kind of thing. And like, like watching like the anxiety of like, they knew how to pick up the phone, but the idea of like scared that they would, nobody would call to order a pizza. They would always do it all online. And it's kind of like, no, it's so much easier. Once you get into a certain point of text messaging, I'm like, yo, can you just pick up the phone and fucking call me? Like, it'd be so much easier. If only there was a way we could directly interact and I didn't have to decipher the tone of your text.
I mean,
or,
it
my
wasn't,
emoji game isn't exactly strong,
It wasn't that long ago. I would have hour-and-a-half conversations.
Yeah,
on the phone.
It's great when it happens now too. I mean, like those are like kind of as I've gone on where there's people, I mean, because life, just takes everybody in different directions, where I actually had a point for a little bit where I just kind of was like, just had it with the phone kind of deal. And I was like, just, there's certain people that you may have just, your lives took you in different directions. And, so a memory pops up and you're like, oh, I wonder what that guy's up to. And I shoot him a text. Hey, do you got some time to chat sometime? And, you can have that like 1 hour conversation and then, hey, I'll talk to you again in 5 years.
Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not anti-technology. Everything goes forward. I'm not one of those, I'm not Clint Eastwood saying get off my lawn. And there are some times when like texting is to the advantage, because you and I both know there were people that would call that would go on way longer than they needed to.
Yes.
And so a quick text can say, yes, I'll be at the restaurant in 20 minutes. Boom. But I mean, being able to call your local grocery store to ask if they have any asparagus in shouldn't be an anxiety and stressful situation.
Yeah. Simple call.
Simple call.
Kind of, yeah. I mean, I think of my father. He worked at a college or university, as you would call it. And he talked about, he worked at the athletic department, and he was like, we used to take 20 kids down to Florida on spring break and just hand them an itinerary, and everybody just managed to find their way to the spots they had to be. Like right now, like it's always one, I forget, who said this, but if you were to say you and I were supposed to meet somewhere, if you walked in and you didn't see me instantly, the first thing you're going to do is text me. Where are you? We used to exist, but back to what I was saying though, is that like the idea of being bored is when, you said that playing with the kids and stuff like that, we created, now granted it was probably trouble at some points in times, but we found ways to make fun out of nothing. Just give us a ball.
Like I can remember a month go by in the summertime when I was 11 or 12, and we would just make stuff that we found in the garage. There's a wheel here, there's a piece of wood here, so let's see if we can make a go-kart. Let's see if we can, create some kind of cannon, or, I'm not saying that everybody, I'm not trying to romanticize it. It's just the point of we made do with stuff that wasn't just staring at a screen.
Right, because again, it's very easy to get bored, or to not be bored, but also to get sucked into, let's face it, a lot of garbage that goes nowhere, or to get worked up about things that would never ever bother us, we never would have been aware of before, or the idea that we had to think about things before we had a chance to put our to speak about them.
And I mean, there are kids now probably like old enough now to get into the bars. Here it's 19, you guys it's 21. Who, if you said go in and approach a stranger and just start up a conversation, they wouldn't have the social skill to do so.
Oh, I mean, I remember, I mentioned back to the college town thing, is that, I would have times where, again, like just like making small talk with people, like, and sometimes like chatting with a girl, you could kind of, you would catch them looking your direction or something like that. You go over and introduce themselves and they get all kind of nervous. And it was I remember one time joking to somebody like, hey, here's my number. Do you want me to just go over the other end of the bar and text you? Would that make you more comfortable? And like, it kind of was like that, the do of it,
Like I keep joking. I wouldn't know what to do if I was single now. I wouldn't have a bloody clue.
Oh, I got lucky. It's just dumb luck is how I was able to find a fiance.
I mean, how many people these days say I met my wife or husband or my partner, literally walking around the park and saying hi? Like those stories don't happen anymore.
Right. Like, and that was my biggest fear when I became single was or not when I became single, but when I started being sober is that how do I meet people? And someone was like, oh, the grocery store. And I'm like, I'm not that guy. Okay. I go to the grocery store to buy food. And you know what? If I see a really pretty girl that's dressed nicely in the grocery store, I'm assuming that she's getting food to make for somebody and she's looking nice for the people where she's going afterwards. Not for me to come talk to her.
No. Yeah. Or the library or, I don't know. Like I have to admit, I met my wife through Plenty of Fish.
Yeah, I met mine through an online thing.
But that was 15 years ago, and I was just figuring out how to do a profile. Like it wasn't and I know I'm dating myself, but nowadays, does anybody date that doesn't involve swiping right?
I don't. I mean, I literally think about this right now. That when I got to college, I was in fall of 2003. Like everyone was all in the same. We're all equally worthless at this point right now. We're all and we just went out there and interacted. Where now a kid, when he gets dropped off at college, parents leave, he can just get on the phone and just, okay, let's see what's out there. Just swipe. Yeah, no, I totally get that.
And the other thing that's funny is like when we went to university, everybody goes for tours and they research them on the internet and they can pick out their room. I literally got accepted, got into residence, had never been there. Day one, just drop yourself off and let's start the adventure. How many kids these days would do that?
My college, how I ended up where I ended up is that me and my buddy went there was a college fair in town. So we used that as an excuse to be able to go out on a school night to have a few drinks, basically, because he had a fake ID. So I remember downing a bottle of Boone's Farm. Talk about dating yourself. I don't even know if that exists anymore. But downing a bottle of Boone's Farm, going in, I was a lacrosse player. I saw that there was a state school that had lacrosse. And I was like, oh, wait, I think I know somebody that goes there. A guy that was in my overclass went there. I went out to visit him. All I did was get drunk in his dorm room. Came back. My mom was like, what'd you think? I'm like, yeah, I could go there. That was it.
And I mean, and then I went to teachers college years later. And again, I was 28 then, but again, I'd never been there. It was 3 hours north of me. I'll figure it out when I get there. And that's all you did.
And I missed that. So this past summer, what I did a lot on my show actually was I'm a huge baseball fan. So I went traveling around to different cities to see different ballparks. And I mostly just kind of like researched where my hotel was, trying to find places that were within a decent distance to the stadium, get an idea of what might be around me. But then I just wandered around the city and figured out how that city worked,
Yeah. There's nothing wrong with getting more research now. I'm guilty of it too. You can sometimes paralysis by analysis.
Yeah, it's a big thing that happens.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I hope you don't mind me taking some control here.
No, do it.
I always say that you can get to know somebody by one of their three favorite things.
Okay.
What is your favorite food? What is your favorite movie? And what is your favorite band or artist?
Okay, that's an ever-changing.
Or at the moment.
At the moment. All right. Well, for food, good old reliable is always going to be a nice steak or pizza. Those are going to be my, I have to battle that one out there. Probably be more steak now because I'm trying not to, as we get older, the pizza starts taking a toll a little bit. So I would say,
trust me, there's such a thing as indigestion.
It's just weight gain,
Yeah, yeah, that's true.
Yeah. So I would go with that one. Favorite movie. I used to kind of say.
I was going to say you could go by genre. If you have a favorite horror versus a favorite comedy versus a favorite whatever,
Well, favorite comedy I kind of went over with. I went with Dirty Work as an answer on that one because Dirty Work is it's like you're in your own little club. It's not everybody has actually seen it or is familiar with it, but I've always loved Dirty Work because it's a terrible movie, but I will watch it constantly. It's short and every line of the movie is a joke. Like there's nothing that is serious in that movie. Everything is
Danny DeVito was great in that film.
Danny DeVito? I think that was
sorry, who's the guy that's with Norm? Who's the tall guy?
That was Artie Lang that was with Norm in Dirty
Work.
It's
Artie Lang. Okay, I'm thinking is it the one where
you're thinking of Screwed, I think.
Maybe.
Yeah, that's a different one. Yeah, Dirty Work is the Revenge for Hire. Chevy Chase has a cameo in it.
I know that I've seen it, but it's been many years.
Yeah, so you got more important things going on. You got a daughter. I mean, one that I used to like just because it would kind of make people uncomfortable. I used to say, but I do love the movie American Psycho.
Oh yeah,
that's so and again because of the aspect of that, I find that movie to be a secret comedy.
Dark comedy for sure, dark comedy.
Once you like, there's certain movies that are horrific like that, where it's like once you realize, okay, this isn't real, this it's a fiction thing, then you can start looking at some of the unintentional comedy of there.
But then that movie is also a take on society.
Yes, that's really the big picture I got out of it. But I would say honestly, one of my favorite movies of all time is True Romance.
Okay.
True Romance, or I used to like the early Tarantino movies because. Movies have lost me completely now, and we'll talk into that because that's actually one of your strong topics of your show with movies is I just miss good dialogue. And an early Tarantino movie like Reservoir Dogs is another one of my favorite movies where it's a movie about a bank robbery that you never see the bank robbery in, but you know everything that happened, and there's just so many good like kind of unrelated. Like I just happened to see the other day the Mr. Pink, talking about how he doesn't tip. Nothing to do with the movie whatsoever, but just like 3 minutes of just amazing dialogue.
I was just looking up how many movies I'd seen this year. I'm at 114.
114. So you're still watching the new stuff, eh?
I will, but with my podcasts, I don't get the chance to that often. I got to watch what we're talking about on the podcast. So I don't get that much time to watch what's current.
Movies have kind of, at this point now, for the most part, you have to really seek out good movies because everything that's big, promoted heavily, it's all a remake or I'm not a big, in the Marvel universe or anything.
No, I don't watch any of the, I'm not a superhero guy.
I just don't like the idea that I have to have seen a bunch of other movies to know what's going on in a movie.
Yeah. I was telling somebody the other day, I was on a podcast and I said, the last superhero movie I watched, I think was the original Iron Man.
Okay.
And I saw that in the theater and I was like, the soundtrack was good. And I didn't mind Robert Downey Jr., but the whole story and all that, I never cared. I was not a comic guy. Superheroes did, and it's good for action for 10 minutes, but then 90 minutes of it gets a bit much to me.
Well, the other thing too is that certain movies, and it seems like most of those movies, you need to be in the theater or have a home theater to really get the true essence of them. Whereas I mentioned like the dialogue-driven movies, you can watch on your cell phone. Even you can just get plugged into a scene. Like Goodfellas is another movie where if those are some rewatchable movies that if it's ever back in the day when movies would be on cable, if I caught a scene of Goodfellas or I caught a scene of Shawshank Redemption, I was dropping what I was doing the rest of the day and I was watching it till the end from that point. So those are
and it's sad to hear that the amount of theaters are shrinking. So there will be a generation of kids that have very rarely ever gone to the theater.
And I was actually just listening to a podcast. There's one I really like about movies called The Rewatchables, which is on the Ringer Network with, I'm not going to really plug Bill Simmons. He doesn't need any more plugs on there, but they were reviewing the movie Can't Hardly Wait. And, honestly, at this point now, I like going back and watching movies that I watched as a kid because now I watch them through a different lens.
Oh, for sure.
As far as, especially movies that happened during my formative years, like movies about high school before I was getting into high school, kind of altered my perception of how I was supposed to be behaving in high school. That's actually something I plan on talking about on a solo episode soon.
But it's funny, like if you watch a movie like Fast Times at Ridgemont High.
Yeah.
And we talk about, what school was like back then. Do you remember that scene in that movie where the teacher brought in the photocopies and all the kids smelled the paper?
Get a good hit of that.
Well, I was old enough. I had that in elementary school where the paper was warm and you got it either in blue, black, maybe red. And you got it and it was warm. And if the paper had a bit of a crinkle in it, every paper had a crinkle in it.
Yep.
And you picked it up and because you get yourself high at the age of 9,
Right. Just like, like a permanent marker.
Exactly. It was the same thing. And it wasn't even a photocopy. It was, what do they call it? A gazetter machine or something. And you strummed it like a drum, and then the copies went around. Like it was And I would, when I would watch a movie in class, it was reel to reel. Like maybe
the projector screens.
The projectors.
I remember some of those. I mean, back to you say that wheeling something in. How about when they would wheel the TV in? Like, oh, it's going to be a movie day today.
Oh, see, as a teacher, it was up until about 5-6 years ago. And if you are in a portable and you had to wheel that thing out through the snow with they put a seat belt around the 30-inch TV so it wouldn't fall on the cart, hopefully, as you went from the school to the portable. Oh, treacherous time. Now the kids have no idea. Now they just press a button to the whiteboard and it's boom.
Here's a new one that I've had, and let me ask if you experienced this as a teacher. If I've had to be like in like a classroom setting, like for job related stuff, I'm the old guy who still writes his notes down.
Yeah.
Now people are just taking pictures of, like the screen. And I'm like, I just want to look at them going, you're not going to look at that later on. And I'm like, I'm not going to look at these notes later on either, but I might retain some of it from writing it.
Yeah, you do. And I mean, the whole skill of when we went to university, you'd be sitting in a lecture hall with 500 kids and you'd all be writing notes. Nowadays, I don't know if they still do it that way, but they record it or you get it on an MP3. I don't know how they do it.
Yeah, they have a podcast of the class, probably.
Probably. You can
Professor's earning some download revenue streams on the side, getting all those listen hours.
I had a good buddy who I'm still good friends with today. And he was back then, the university in 1993 was a big deal because you could take classes by videotape. And so then you could do it at your own time pace. Well, my buddy was taking German and waited until the day before the exam to start watching the videos.
Ooh, that would be a rough one.
So he was watching like 18 straight hours of German or something stupid like that.
Yeah, I remember falling for that one. I remember I took a history class that was supposed to be a telecourse, and it was just the driest videos that I was watching possible. It was just like, God, are they trying to keep this stuff a secret? Like,
I mean, part of the reason for going to class was so you'd be there to hear it, because you wouldn't do it laying in bed.
Right. I mean, that's always the same thing with morning classes, but. No, and then I was gonna. You had a third question I didn't answer. Then we did the movie thing.
Music, movies, food.
Music, movies. Yes,
who's your favorite band or artist?
Band or artist? So I don't have like necessarily a go-to, but I would always say that one I've been, and it killed me to see a video of them performing recently. But if you could say, Ryan, you can go to any concert in the history of time that existed. You go to anyone. AC/DC is one of my favorite bands.
They're my number 3.
AC/DC, I don't remember. It's music goes in phases with me. Like, music is a nice background sound for me. I mean, as far as I haven't come across a band that I really like. I mean, I used to really like the Strokes a lot. They were a good band I liked. Foo Fighters, or basically anything that Dave Grohl did was kind of big for me. But I don't have like a defined genre. I'm kind of just a little bit all over the place, because you kind of just different settings, different sounds. There's different songs for different moods and everything. So that's kind of, I don't have a devoted collection to one musician, I'll just say.
Yeah. So
when growing up, I liked Jimi Hendrix a lot, because obviously he just had that different sound, going. I kind of always wanted to be whatever the most popular was. I was one of those guys. I didn't always want to be a part of whatever the most popular thing was.
See, for food, I'll go chicken wings. I love
chicken wings. Is a good. That was a close answer. I haven't eaten them as much since I left Western New York.
I was going to say we won't for the next 4 years, but we used to pop over the border to Buffalo and go to what's the one where the
Anchor Bar?
The Anchor Bar. We would go to the original Anchor Bar. We go there every year, and we'd catch a Buffalo Bison game, and then we'd go to the Anchor Bar. We'd order a plate of 100 for the table and just go.
Yeah, but I mean, once upon a time, there was when I lived out in Western New York, it was like there was a rotating set of places that had 25-cent wing nights. I have put down 50 wings in a sitting. Doesn't feel good.
Yeah, my record is 6 pounds in one sitting.
Oh, go by. So you bone in or bone out?
Bone in.
Okay,
I suck them dry, like cartilage and all. Like there's nothing left on that bone.
Yeah, no, chicken wings are a good one for sure. But I mean, I'll always tell anybody that part of me not eating chicken wings as much as you have to go, if you're not eating wings at the place that they were made, if they ever go into a container, the value they lose by exponentially, they lose the value of them.
There's no, for me, I find a fine line. I like them crunchy. Sometimes I'll ask for extra, cook them a little longer. but not dried out.
Okay.
Crunchy without being dried out.
Yeah, no, they can get a little too much there. A real good way of doing them is if somebody does them smoked and then fried. You get a little bit of everything with that.
Oh, nice. And I mean, for flavors, I can go for, I'm pretty easy. I used to, there was a time in my life where I went for the hottest of hot, just,
Yeah, I went through that phase too.
And, I got to the point where, last time I did that at Wild Wing, their hottest ones, they were deciding whether to call an ambulance because they thought I was going to pass out.
Oh, yeah, no, I've had some times where it looked like I may have taken some bad drugs or something because it's like I'm hallucinating, I'm sweating, I'm shaking.
Yeah. So like when you've finished having a wing called Ring of Fire, you know what you're getting, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of one of those things where I may have wanted to draw some attention to myself and then even pretending that the hottest thing wasn't that hot when it was fucking killing me.
Yeah. For me, it wasn't a show off thing. It was just, I wanted to challenge myself.
Yeah.
But to a certain point, I'm like, okay, like I still like spice. I always have 2 different hot sauces in the fridge, but to me, they're just flavor. If it overpowers the food, what's the point?
And that was always a big thing I had to tell. I mean, I get it, Buffalo, that's where the home of the chicken wing is, as far as, not that I would say you didn't invent it, you discovered it, okay? It wasn't like you invented that part of the bird, it's just you just decided to start eating it. But when someone says they have good wings, it's like there's good wings all over the country. Really what you're saying is you have good sauce.
Yeah, I mean, you could get wings that are pretty bony, but then sometimes I'm skeptical about the nuclear wings that are 4 pounds a wing. Like, why are they so big too? Right. So
right. What are they full of? What drugs are they on?
We're talking. Are they from Homer and Springfield? Who knows?
But I actually, a little pro tip I kind of went on to is that chicken thighs you can kind of make as a fork and knife chicken wing.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you get the skin still on them. Yeah, when the price of wings went through the roof during the pandemic, that became a little secret. One of my buddies who was a cook did. He's like, yo, you can still fry the shit out of these things, coat them in sauce. He was like, yeah, if you want to actually eat meat off the bone, you can still pick it up at the end. But how about you do fork and knife with it? And I'm like, yeah, smart thinking.
Yeah, and it'll taste the same,
Right, it's all chicken.
But
so chicken wings is your big to do now. Let's go with your movie.
My all-time favorite movie is The Blues Brothers.
Okay, all right.
I love the acting. I love the music. The ending gets a little silly, but it's fun. My favorite horror movie is the Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Okay. See, horror movies for me, they kind of lost their luster with me because I'm the youngest of my family. And I remember the whole thing being that on Saturday nights, like my grandfather used to babysit us. And Grandpa was a very, very nice guy. Just would take us to the video store and, let my brothers rent whatever they wanted to. So I grew up watching the Friday the 13th and the Jasons and all of those. So the true traditional horror movie never really, because I grew up on it, never really went with me. For me, the movies that actually scared me the most turned out to be like the supernatural types, or I actually just rewatched what I thought was the scariest movie I'd ever seen. It wasn't as scary the second time around 20 years later. You ever remember a movie called Event Horizon?
Yep. Yep. That's more on the sci-fi end.
It's because there's that supernatural element to it. Or my one thing, I swear this movie freaks me out worse than anything I've ever seen for the dumbest of all reasons. Remember the movie Contact?
Yep.
For some reason, Jake Busey's character, just maybe that, that look on his face or like that, just creeped me the hell out. But I'll never forget being more disappointed of that. I was more terrified before I went to watch the original Psycho than I actually was when I went to watch it. Like my father was talking about how big of a deal it was when he saw it as a kid. And I remember having all of these just horrible dreams. Like, oh my God, I'm going to watch it. I remember watching it first thing in the morning too, just so it was bright and sunshine, not to scare me as much. Maybe that affected the aesthetic, but horror doesn't age as well, I guess I would say.
My mom to this day won't have a shower with nobody in the house.
Actually, the movie that freaked me out about with actually another just random one that scared me was the movie Signs.
Oh, Signs. Yep.
Because
Bruce Willis.
That was.
No, that's the Mel Gibson. Mel Gibson is.
Yeah, Mel Gibson.
Yep.
And the reason that I had never the more terrifying experience was that about the whole alien invasion and how they could see the reflection of the alien in the TV. The day after I saw that movie, the power went out while I was in the shower. And I just remember just being so terrified that when I open the shower curtain, I'm going to see the bathroom mirror and behind me, I'm going to see something crawling around or something. But just little dumb things like that'll scare me. But pure straight horror, It hasn't really done it for me. And I actually meant to ask you with this one, obviously you evaluate horror movies. How is that genre doing now? Because I feel like the cell phone makes horror movies a little more difficult.
It's funny because there was a lull there for a while. Like I can watch straight up, I can watch a movie from 1914 and enjoy it as much as I do 2025. Yeah, one of my favorite horror movies is The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, and that's like 1918, 1919, something like that. So age doesn't affect me. Nowadays, horror has gone through a bit of a renaissance. At the Grammys, The Substance did well. Demi Moore, I don't know if you ever saw The Substance.
No, I didn't.
Very courageous acting by Demi. She should have won that Oscar because for no other reason, it's body horror. It's a take on society. And let's be frank here. She stands there absolutely buck naked. Now, and it's not the sexual thrill of it. That's just courageous at her age to have the confidence to do this role and do it well.
Well, she also posed nude in Playboy when she was pregnant, so she's got the confidence.
Yeah, but I mean, like she's in her 60s and she had no problem. I mean, I don't know her personally. I don't know if she had a problem with it, but it didn't appear so.
Well, I mean, that's the whole beauty of acting. Maybe she was terrified, but the character portrayed that way. Which, by the way, 60 is like the new 40 in terms of like I remember what 60-year-olds looked like when I was younger. They don't look anything like they do now. I have the thing now being 40. I'm at the gym sometimes, and it's like, oh, that's a nice looking older lady, and you're like, oh my God, she's older than you, and you're 40, you're 39, and she's probably got at least 15 years on you. It's like, well, I guess I'm into 50-year-old women now.
Well, I find you. I'm the type of guy that's always been attracted to somebody my age. I don't want, like I'm happily married. I'm no straying at all. But if I were single, I don't want a 25-year-old lady.
No. I looked at, first off, that was the thing with the college thing is that if I could measure your age as a fraction of my age, that was terrible. Actually, another Canadian hero. I remember one time I was having a good time chatting with a girl and I made a reference to a John Candy movie. And she said, "Who's John Candy?" I could not have been any more turned off at that moment.
Just walked away.
You don't know who John Candy is? You're too young for me. I can't do this. Like, even though you're only like 5 years younger than me, but it's like, you not know who John Candy is. And to the point is that I've even gone down with the attraction. I mean, thankfully I have a beautiful fiance, is that I need intelligence. Intelligence is ultimately just as attractive to me as physical appearances. Cause guess what? We spend a lot more time talking than we do other things.
Well, I always told anybody that listen, your boobs will sag, your stomach will wrinkle, you'll get the crow's feet on your head, but your brain stays as is. And so you're really going for the person you have that connection with.
Yeah, an ugly mind can undo a lot of damage.
Exactly. You can overlook some things if you know it's a good person. And overlook sounds harsh. If it's not necessarily someone you would want initially, but everything else brings you in, you appreciate everything that they bring to the table.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So the other thing about the horror these days is like last year, it probably finished in the top 5 was Terrifier 3.
Oh, those are a special.
Art the Clowns. Those are I love gore. Love it. On Land of the Creeps, my nickname is Bill the Butcher.
Okay.
I can watch the most extreme. Like I've seen stuff where people say, "What's the goriest movie you've ever seen?" And they'll say like, "Oh, I don't know, some film that's out now, The Conjuring or something." And I'm like, I can watch movies that would make the hair on the back of your neck stand up. Like I've literally seen stuff that 98% of the population just can't watch. But like there's a film, I don't know if you've seen Fulci's movie The Beyond from 1980, Italian horror.
No,
there's a scene where there's a woman and a nail goes right into her eyeball and they pull it out. And 99% of the population, this is a natural reaction. They cover their face. I look forward. I want to see it.
Probably one of the just thinking about that actually too. I'm thinking to the original Pet Sematary movie. I remember when the little kid cuts I think it's Fred Gwynn is the guy, when he cuts him in the Achilles, but he like, the knife goes across there and they show it so well. That was like, kind of.
I'll tell you, there's one scene in in movie history that made me go, and there's a movie called I Spit on Your Grave.
Okay.
Have you seen I Spit on Your Grave?
I have not. I've heard of it. Okay.
I Spit on Your Grave, David Hess, mid-70s. And what happens is a woman gets brutally raped by a bunch of guys in a hick town. She's there as a writer. And when she survives, she's going to take revenge and kill everyone that attacked her. Well, there's one scene where she brings a guy back and they get intimate and they're fooling around in the bathtub and there's bubbles. And the woman puts her arm down and there's a floor mat, and under the floor mat is a sharp steak knife. And so she's giving him a hand job or something underneath the bubbles, but she grabs the knife and she slices. You don't see the slice. And she keeps the knife in there. And because it's such a quick, sharp cut, he doesn't even notice right away. And she casually gets up, gets a towel, wraps it around her, locks the door, and goes downstairs. While this guy is holding his crotch, yelling for his life, I can't stop the bleeding. And you're like, you're literally crossing your legs like never in your life.
But you don't see it, correct?
You don't see it. You might see a blood squirt, but you don't see the visceral violence.
So that reminds me of, that must be very well directed and well acted. That always reminds me of the movie Scarface.
Oh, the shower scene.
The shower scene. They originally wanted to give that movie an X rating, and Brian De Palma, the actor or the director, was like, "Why?" And he was like, "You don't see anything. It's just that you see the blood splatter on Al Pacino's face and the way he's reacting to what's going on, but you do not. You know that the guy's being hacked up with a chainsaw, but you do not ever see a chainsaw touch skin.
That is my.
You can visualize because of the actor how intense it was. I just was reminded of a scene that, always actually kind of horrified me right now from a movie that I still don't even realize I don't understand, but the bathtub scene from The Shining.
Oh,
I even got you with that one.
It's like that scene from Something About Mary where she sees the window across the street.
Which The Shining is a movie still. I mean, I still don't know what is actually happening in that movie. I just know that it's really good and really intense. Watching that Room 237 documentary about the theories of what it may be about just made it even more confusing for me.
I mean, something as simple as if you look at Jack Nicholson's tie, and the pattern in the tie is the same as the pattern on the rug, which is the same as the pattern on the outside of the maze.
Right. And it's like, there's all these, I can't think of all this. I can't comprehend. No. I can't get inside of Kubrick's mind. I mean, for a really, really good director to have all those little Easter eggs in there, that's a level of genius that I just can't comprehend.
Well, there's the whole bit about, did he get into filming the moon landing? Because apparently there were
the whole theory that, they called it Room 237 because the moon is 237,000 miles away,
And but apparently there were NASA people that were on set. So it just led more to the.
But that's what art is. And if you're still talking about it and still wondering about it, like that's one of my favorite things about American Psycho to discuss is, did it actually happen? The whole thing of that, was this all a manifestation of Patrick Bateman's head, or did it did it actually happen?
Was it just a lunch meal, and he just went off.
Right. But the fact is that the idea that you're still talking about it, or that you actually care, I mean, that's what the idea with art is. I mean, when you really ask me the movie thing, I mean, movies I have not been as big on. I have gone more towards television series lately, because I feel like that a good writer and a good director can really, if you make a movie, you have 2 hours you can hold someone's attention span for. You've got to edit out a bunch of stuff, and you only left with so much. But if you have a really well-developed story, you can really, really, really do it. And that's why I've always liked television. And I mean, over time, it's grown to be my favorite television series is Sopranos. And the whole thing is that what happens at the end of Sopranos. And if you haven't seen it, I'm not going to discuss it with you.
Well, see, I did a whole bit on the first episode of Music, Movie, Sports and stuff that I don't watch TV anymore because I can't be bothered keeping up. Because there's too much sports on and too many movies to watch. I just don't have time to watch. The last TV show I watched with regularity was the original Law and Order.
Okay.
And then I stopped that about halfway through when Lenny got into the car accident and the attorney died. That was about halfway through, and I stopped. The only other show I used to watch occasionally was the one about the nerds, and they lived in the apartment in New York City.
Friends?
No, not something about my mother.
Big Bang Theory?
Big Bang Theory.
Okay.
I would watch that if it was on, but I wouldn't go out of my way to watch it.
Gotcha.
But nowadays, it's funny you said that. I normally don't watch. The only thing I watch on TV is cooking and sports.
Which sports to me has even lost some of its cachet to me. Is that I never thought, there's always this series of things that like, okay, what would 14-year-old Ryan say to 40-year-old Ryan about some of his complaints? Where I am now at the point that I don't really like watching. I'm a huge, my sports is the bane of my part of my existence now. I don't necessarily enjoy them as much because I have too much access to them. Like where it used to be, now because I can watch every game I want to watch, I now judge them differently. It used to be if there was a game on, I was happy.
Yeah. I mean, some of the kids nowadays don't understand the thought of a game being blacked out.
Yeah.
That was like for us would be a Toronto Maple Leafs game got blacked out because they didn't sell enough tickets or whatever, right?
And the idea that, like you would look forward to watching the news later on to see the brief highlights, or the idea that when Sports Center really mattered, back when Sports Center had sports, like where you'd be like, oh my God, I got to see these little clips here. And like, yeah, so many major things happen that we never saw any video evidence of. The idea that, West Coast football games, we would just see the score of, and then, but never know the play-by-play of there. And we just, only evaluated players by their highlights. Well, you can put a highlight reel of me doing something and think I'm an all-star.
Yeah. But funny you said that, like I only watch cooking. I can talk about my cooking watching. There's no problem. But the other night we were home with my wife and we had a rare night out where my daughter was sleeping at a friend's house. And we watched on Prime that show, The Bondsman.
Okay. With
Kevin Bacon. And it's only 8 half-an-hour series. And episodes, and I'm so used to watching movies and sports that are 2.5, 3 hours long. A half-an-hour episode is like, it's done. Half an hour, it's finished.
Yeah,
but it's good. If you got nothing to watch with your fiance, watch The Bondsman.
Well, so I mean, the other thing that's been kind of lost of it is that like we're getting the whole streaming thing. Like eventually, we reach the law of diminishing returns, where it's nice to have the access to certain things, but like the idea of a show being on once a week, and that was it. You had a week to, and for a week you discussed it, you analyzed it. Like I kind of think of, I was late to the party on Game of Thrones, which sounds like you haven't watched, but I remember just binge watching an entire series of things to where like, you would have the cliffhanger ending of an episode. So you'd be like going right into the next one, but never actually thinking about what I just watched before. Whereas, you might watch now, maybe like an HBO show, you might watch like 2 times in a week, to kind of recap things, where I've actually had where I will go back and watch old TV shows over and over again because there's these little nuggets that I missed there. Like, oh, geez, I never realized they were setting this up so well,
Like for years, my all-time favorite show was Seinfeld.
Seinfeld is one of my favorites. I used to be, maybe I'm not as good as I used to be, but it used to be almost impossible to stump me on a Seinfeld trivia question.
Now, the thing was, in my 3rd year university, I used to have a course at 7:00. So I always missed it. And so it went years. You remember the episode, The Puerto Rican Day Parade?
Yes.
I missed it the first time it aired, and then it got banned.
Yeah.
Remember, for being racist or whatever.
Because Kramer accidentally burns the Puerto Rican flag.
Yes. Yeah. And it wasn't done out of malice. It was just a comedic thing, right?
Right.
And so it literally took me 10 years to find that episode to the point where they could show it again. Like you had to order the DVD and then you'd have it on a special, The thought of that happening nowadays, there's a generation that would have no concept of that.
Well, like the Seinfeld, for me, the thing that kills me is that now you can get anything on your streaming service. I can't pick out an episode of Seinfeld. I used to just love, turning on the network. What episodes do I get today? And there was actually another episode that I thought got banned. It just turned out that it had been so long since I actually caught in the loop. But remember the one where Kramer's entertaining the Japanese guys?
Oh, in the drawer.
Yeah, and he's hacking them up in the drawer, but like the whole thing, I thought that they banned that one because I never know like what the line. I'm not a politically correct guy. I'm always, I was heavily inspired by George Carlin growing up. So my idea, my
The
main
5
objective,
words you can't say on TV.
7, but
Or 7, whatever it
yeah.
was, 7, whatever it was. Yeah.
And there's more ways to describe those words than there are those words.
Yeah,
I gotta stop saying God damn it.
And so my favorite band of all time is Rush.
Rush, okay, I forget what it was, but I was always in the impression that was a female lead singer.
Oh, Geddy. You wouldn't be the first.
Right, but Rush I like because there's not other bands that sound like Rush. Rush it's a one of one. Rush
is Rush, and like growing up, it was not popular to be a Rush fan, like because it was basically a geeky guy band, or a band about people that are really into musicians. Like you wouldn't get any.
Neil Peart's considered one of the best drummers of all time.
Neil Peart, Geddy Lee, and Alex Lifeson are all maestros of what they do. I've seen them in concert 5 times, and to see them live, to imagine that amount of noise coming from 3 people is just, and at the same time, Alex Lifeson can play the most quiet flamenco guitar. But I've always, my music tastes always go towards musicians that can play.
Yes.
Like I was never a fan of quote, Kiss. Kiss put on a great show, hardworking band. You got your money's worth, but they were not exactly top end musicians.
Right. That's where I go with AC/DC is that the idea of that, I mean, this, when my favorite concert ever is AC/DC live at Donington. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, but it was a huge, giant music festival somewhere over in Europe. And they come out. I mean, it's like 300,000 people. I mean, you can't even an endless sea of people. And then you got little Angus Young coming out there and plays the opening licks to Thunderstruck. And it's just like, oh my God, let's go. Like, I cannot imagine the juice that is running through you at a live show like that.
Do you remember in 2003, Toronto had SARS Fest?
SARS Fest. I wanted to go. My mother wouldn't let me.
I was there, one of 500,000 people.
Oh my God.
To see, and it was my first time seeing AC/DC, and Angus blew me away. Like, I've seen a lot of good guitarists in my life in concert. I don't know if he's the most talented, but he is the most fun and the best one to watch.
That's the thing. Make a show of it, and that's It's always become where there's nothing more disappointing of bands that I like the way they sound, and then I saw them live, and I was like, "What the fuck is this?" Is if you can't replicate it, then you're just not. You're a studio musician.
Okay, here's a question. What is the worst concert experience you've had?
Worst concert experience I
who did you see and you go, "Oh, geez, I wish I had my $80 back," or whatever it was.
It might be Bob Dylan, actually.
I could have seen him before. He actually played our local town that's only 100,000 people, but I refused to go. I didn't want to hear a rambling.
I saw him in it was actually my first concert. That's just one came to mind. I saw him at you might even know them if you're a hockey guy, which would I be racist if I assumed a Canadian was a hockey fan?
Oh no, I'm hockey through and through.
So I grew up right down the road from RPI, Rensselaer Polytechnic.
Oh, RPI, Joe Juno.
Joe Juno, Adam Oates, yes.
Yep.
Darren Pupa, they were all.
Oh, was Poops from there? I didn't realize.
Pupa was at RPI. Yeah, my father worked for that college, so I was right down the road there. And Bob Dylan and Natalie Merchants were the two.
Canadian.
Yep, and then the other, I'm trying to think. I used to see Dave Matthews at SPAC, Saratoga Performing Arts Center. And I don't really feel like he brought his A game to some of those shows. I was but that was like that trend where I would just, there was a high school age was okay. You're going to go to a Dave Matthews concert and smoke pot, so that was kind of like the base to do of it. But I do remember having some pleasant surprises where I never realized I liked Tom Petty as much as I did until I went to a $20 Tom Petty concert and found myself going, I know the words to every song here.
Well, see, the worst concert experience I ever had was about 10 years ago at a casino. Deep Purple was playing.
Okay.
And I love Deep Purple, but Ian Gillan, he's past it. He is well past it. And he's still going now. I don't know, maybe he's had some kind of surgery or something, but he literally had to stop between songs and go backstage. And I'm assuming he's getting oxygen. I don't know what the hell he's doing.
Yeah, that's that was where I brought up I saw the clip recently of, I applaud rock and rollers who are still out there doing their thing, but I saw a clip of AC/DC doing Thunderstruck the other day from their most recent show. I mean, they're in their 70s now, and it was a painful watch. It's like hats off for them still being able to do it. I remember the Rolling Stones, they played a show at the Bills Stadium there, and the tickets were hundreds of dollars. And people that went there like, oh, they're still just as good as ever. I'm like, I wasn't there, but if they're still as good as they ever was, then they weren't very good in the first place, is the way I was looking at it.
No, I somehow I don't think they're the same as they were in 72. I just don't.
Yeah, but I got out of the concert scene a while ago because I started to I don't like large gatherings of people. It just brings out the worst of everybody, where it's just like nobody, like I would always have the place I mentioned, SPAC, Saratoga Performing Arts Center. You would go to the lawn. Everybody needs to stand up. It's super annoying. I'm 5'7". I can't see everybody. I'm just kind of thinking, if we all just sat down, we'd all be able to see.
See, I went in the summer and in Toronto at one of the facilities, and they had lawn seats, and I sat and saw Foreigner and Styx.
Okay.
But then we made sure we walked around. My buddy went and got a beer, got a hot dog, and so you're not just, I can't sit there for 98 minutes on the grass. I just
can't get lost into music the way that's like, so there's some people that like, hey, if that's their therapy or how they, go about, like some people really get lost at a show. Music for me is always kind of like a good background noise. Like kind of, with the podcasting thing. I mean, when I have free time, I have podcasts going on in the background and I'm not actively listening necessarily. Every now and again, something catches me. Some of my favorite music experiences have been when I went to a bar and didn't know that there was a band there that night. And then randomly you hear something like, oh, what's that? That sounds good. Let me go check this out. Those are my kind of, some of my more favorite.
Well, we got to the point where for our wedding, we paid for a DJ and a live band. And the live band was the band that we used to follow that played the bars around us. Because they did a lot of covers and they had good personality and they were active and interactive with the crowd and stuff. You don't see weddings anymore with live bands.
Yeah, no, that's actually been, unless you're going to always go back to the terrible movie, The Wedding Singer. I want John Lovitz as my wedding singer.
But I mean, if you got a decent bar band around you, and they know who you are, they'll give you a reasonable price.
Yeah, no, I mean, mine's kind of a small scale wedding we're doing, or something that started as one thing and it's turning into another. But we're not really going too crazy with that. We're actually going to be, probably. We have a little reception planned, and my fiance is not. She's from Kenya originally, so I'm actually going to be piping in some of her music, which I enjoy. The lyrics are in Swahili. Don't understand a word of what they're saying. It's kind of got this like Caribbean kind of vibe to it, but it still it's laid back and chill, but it has some energy to it.
Steel drums.
I don't believe so. I think it's a little bit of synth kind of going on.
Oh, okay. Interesting. I don't know Kenyan music, so I couldn't tell you. I don't know.
I guess I would ask you this one. It's a way for me to answer the question, to bring this one up too. But What was a concert you went to that you had very limited expectations and you were like, oh my God, that was one of the best shows I went to?
I went to a concert. I've seen him a couple times. The first time I saw Steve Miller.
Oh, really?
Now, I knew who he was. I really loved seeing him. I'd heard his stuff forever, but I didn't want my expectation to be too high where it was a disappointing show. So I went in hoping to enjoy myself, but not necessarily expecting it. And he was fantastic. He had a crowd of 20,000 people up and dancing. And another one I went to was Scorpions and Megadeth.
Oh, the Rock You Like a Hurricane?
Yeah.
Scorpions? Yeah.
So that would have been, I don't know, 6-7 years ago, maybe. But anyways, the Scorpions have been around for a long time. They've been around since the late 60s. There were people in the audience who had walkers who came to watch the Scorpions because they had been fans since 68. And if you were 30 years old in 1968, you're going to be at that age. But they still came out, and like nobody gave them any problem. Yeah, sure, sir. Come on through. Like, a lot of people think like a heavy metal crowd is rude and drunk, and oh no, they are some of the best crowds you'll ever go to is a heavy metal concert.
Yeah, it's where it's those Fish concerts. Those are the ones where everyone's got an attitude. I found.
I've never been to Fish.
You don't need to go.
That's one band. There's a few bands that I never really got into, not on purpose. I just never did. I never did with them. I never did with Tool. I never got into Tool.
I liked a couple of their songs, but they're just a little bit too out there, I guess I would say. And
Very talented. Danny Carey is a fantastic drummer, and like I know some of the songs, but not very well. The other one, I never got into Dream Theater.
Not even sure who they are.
Dream Theater is very prog rock metal.
Okay.
And they were Mike Portnoy, the drummer, was very world renowned. They've been around for a long time, but I never got into them. There's some bands like nowadays, I couldn't tell you a song in the top 100.
I no idea what's going on in the world of music now.
Unless randomly Taylor Swift has a song. I don't know.
Oh, actually, I just realized now too, the worst musical experience I ever had. Marshall Tucker Band.
Can't you see?
We just got to the point where we were just yelling at him just to play that song and get it over with. You know, we were kind of just like, you're like, all right, at least there's going to be that one song.
Heard it in a love song.
Yeah. But he was, so there was like a local, like there was a free concert series in the city of Albany called Alive at 5, and he was the big to-do. So we went to see him, and the next day they were talking about how they had to pull him out of the bar nearby to get him to go on stage. So it started making sense why it was as bad as it was, but like, he was pretty rough. The band that pleasantly surprised me was, I remember I saw Incubus.
Oh, really?
I saw Incubus, and do you remember Phantom Planet?
No.
They were
a band?
It was a band. They had one real big hit song. I forget what TV show was. They had a song called California. We've been on the run, chasing number one. Either way, there was the big thing to do with them is there was an actor, Jason Schwartzman, that was from the movie Outside Providence, I think, and he was the drummer for that band. But this was just, again, like a concert that they're in the area. It was a cheap ticket. Went there, and it wasn't a packed concert or anything, but it just had such a cool vibe to it. It was just, like, wow, like this is a good, even back then when it was, if I didn't know a song, if I was still interested, I just remember them standing out, and I don't know what they're up to these days.
I remember going to a show once at the casino on the American side of Niagara. Whatever the big native casino across the
Seneca, Niagara.
Seneca.
Know it very well.
I saw Rich Robinson from the Black Crowes.
Okay.
Because Chris is the lead singer, he's usually the face of the band, but the two of them don't always get along, so there would be breaks in between with Black Crowes. And he did a show with maybe 500 people at the most. And it was nice and quiet. It was basically acoustic, a little bit of electric. And there was a guy standing behind us talking about fantasy football quite loudly, like a couple guys just up there. And he actually stopped the concert and said, "Are you done? You finished your conversation? Okay, I'd like to continue, please."
Those are the ones too of that. I remember having actually a funny story. My buddy got thrown out of a Bruce Springsteen concert, and as he was this big Italian guy from New York City, and his whole thing is like, I understand, I get it. People paid hundreds of dollars. They didn't want to hear me singing. They wanted to hear Bruce singing. But you do have that one that that's what gets me with concerts is there's some people that just don't have the decorum, I guess I would say.
I remember I had once, I went with a buddy in Toronto to see The Who. Okay. And it was later in their career. So the arena holds 22,000 people. They weren't selling it all out, but we had bought in cheap seats. So what they ended up doing was closing off the cheap seats, and they upgraded our seats. And so we went from $120 seats or $80 seats down to the $300 seats because they moved us. But I was back when I was still drinking, so I was feeling great, and I was singing Behind Blue Eyes, and I was yammering on My Generation. And my buddy goes, "This isn't karaoke. Let the band play."
Well, and that's actually maybe where we can kind of segue a little bit in the conversation, or at least bring up the other thing is that there's probably some great concerts I went to and some horrible ones I went to, but I used to just get so drunk at them that I don't really know what happened. I just ended up being able to say I had a ticket to it.
Well, the last time we saw Rush on their final farewell tour, I had gone up to get a beer, and I had just missed Last Call. And my buddy was with me, who wasn't a big Rush fan. And eventually we saw somebody leaving, and I think we just said, "All right, let's go." So I missed the last 20 minutes because I just walked out.
Well, I mean, hey, you gotta beat the crowd sometimes.
Well, that's it. Yeah. I somehow made it home. God knows how, but I did.
Yeah, that's the whole thing. Is that I don't know how I'm here, but I am. As
I was
I
going to say, to segue into the drinking thing, one of the reasons I quit was I would black out.
yeah.
And it was, like I somehow almost always somehow on autopilot made my way home fine. But it got to the point where I was like, there's 2 hours there. I have no idea.
I would have some things that would happen where you would wait. Like, I would wake up, and I mean, there was a lot of things that would go on, but I started because I started becoming around the clock guy. Like I started dreading hangovers where I would wake up and, hair the dog and kind of go through the functional things. But yeah, there would definitely be some things that, when you're at a certain level, you found them to be kind of funny. Like, oh, I woke up and, my big thing, I'd be like, why am I not hungry this morning? And then I would see that I had a takeout container in and I'm like, I don't remember this. Or you'd have the whole thing of, you'd run into somebody like, I remember once I run into somebody that's knew an awful lot about me, didn't know who they were. And then I found out I had one of the most wildest nights ever with them. And I'm just kind of like, cool.
You don't recall. You don't remember me? You don't remember Paul? No, you don't remember Paul.
Definitely started one of those. But there was some times where I would definitely wake up and it's almost a painful movie for me to watch now, but such a great movie. Or, I mean, you won the Academy Award for it, but Leaving Las Vegas with Nicolas Cage, there would be times where I would just wake up and like you could hear the sound of silence, if that makes sense. And I would just always have this, oh my God, I got to probably apologize to some people this morning. That kind of feeling that was going there. But no, I just started getting to be the point where I was always somebody that wanted to push my limits and see how far they could go. And I think I kind of started pushing them as far as they could go
I remember at university, I remember waking up once in a woman's dorm. No idea how I got there. I just woke up. I was on a couch, and there were more women around than I remember there being.
I had one time, there was one girl that I was not particularly attracted to whatsoever, who was always trying to throw herself at me. And one day I woke up in her place, and like she had this like shit-eating grin on her face when she saw me wake up and knew that like, oh yeah, he doesn't know what he did. And I was like, I need to get the fuck out of here. Like I just couldn't have got out fast enough. Like not even knowing exactly how I even got walking outside. Thankfully I was in a small town, so I could kind of piece together where I was. But I'm like, I don't even know if we went all the way or anything like that. But the fact of the matter is I woke up at somebody's place that I would never, ever let myself go. Those are
the type of drinker I was I could go 3 weeks without a beer. I wasn't addicted. But when I did sit down for a drink, I always wanted to keep the buzz going. So one drink became 6 became 12. My wife would say, Bill, it just became water to you.
That would be what the thing would happen with me is that it became easy. I could very easily make the decision to not drink. But once I did, like it's amazing how like at 2 or 3 beers, I would be, make the right decision still. But then once we got into the 6th to the 8th, we were off for the races and we're going to go as far as this thing can go. Like the idea, and I would be laughing. Like I would have times where I'd be at the bar and people would be telling me like, don't you have that big work thing tomorrow? And I'll be there and it'll be no big thing, and I mean, now just stepping outside of myself, I'm just like, how did I ever think that was cool or fun?
Yeah, for me, it was always about the 7th beer. Once you hit about the 7th beer, your recollection and your rationalization wasn't at the level it needed to be. Up until 7 beers, I was usually pretty good.
Well, culturally too now, the way that Canadians and the way that Americans drink, I believe, are entirely different as far as I'm concerned. Because I remember when we used to go over, so I used to go over to the Canadian side of the Niagara Falls at 19 years old because we could go over there.
Could drink and
we could drink, we could gamble, all that stuff. But I never really, why can't I get you're buying 4-packs. What's up with this thing? And it's like, oh, because there's so much more alcohol. Or Canadian beer tastes like shit. Yeah, because there's so much more booze in it. Where in America, it was just, let's just guzzle light domestics, all night.
Well, that's the thing. In Canada, we used to always just call American beer as water.
Yeah,
at 4%, that's the maximum it was at one point.
Well, and realistically for me too, though, is that beer was, I used to have an expression, nothing bad happens if you only drink Bud Light. That was kind of my whole thing, because you can only drink so much before you got full, and it was just kind of like, just buzz maintenance at that point. But then what started evolving to me is that Bud Light was the Aquafina that I had between shots of Jameson.
Beer before liquor, never sicker. Liquor before beer, have no fear.
So to me, it was just all just all of that stuff. It was just all just become a free for all, like to the point that I kind of assumed this a little bit of an identity, I guess I would say, of that. Like I would kind of fall into this character a little bit as far as that, this is how I do things, or I kind of, it was a little bit kind of what defined me, which, at the time I loved it because you walk into the bar and I'm like, I'm Norm from Cheers. Everybody knows your name kind of thing. But then as you kind of step outside of that, you're like, what the fuck kind of life was I living?
Yeah, well, and it's funny because being around drunk people when you're not drunk is a totally different experience sober.
Oh,
because then you sit back and you go, oh fuck, that was me.
It's exactly what happens where I have a certain level of anxiety for a little bit. I used to kind of go out for I might even still stop out for somewhere every now and again, but like I give myself an hour shelf life tops. Like I always kind of found, even with the regular drinking holidays, like I was kind of always steer clear of those. St. Patrick's Day, I was there after everybody else had gotten done doing all the dumb shits. Now it's time for the pros to do their thing. New Year's Eve, I'm out of there at 12:30 at night because all the people that aren't normally out there, you get to kind of see that. And that's kind of what it is it's really just reminding you of what you probably are like more times than not. And yeah, that gives me like a horrible thing of anxiety is that you want to think I wasn't that guy, but who are you? We're all, nobody's special. We're all the same at that point.
I mean, it's always an amalgam of who you are to a certain point. There are things that seep through but they become more over exaggerated, obviously, when you're like that. Like I'm a very touchy feely person. When I would get drunk, I would do a lot of kissing. Like I would kiss my friends and it'd be a big joke. And even to this day, someone who's a good friend with, I'll give them a kiss as they're leaving or something. But it used to get to the point where, you were probably annoying people. And, or you're giving lots of hugs and that kind of stuff. And I can see people just saying, Bill, just get the hell away from me.
Well, you have this heightened sense of self that you have where you always feel like you're the coolest guy in the room for the most part. So in my case, was being somebody that would make a lot of jokes, I was probably crossing a lot of lines, and maybe just some people just were cooler heads prevailing. We're not, as long as I never got my ass kicked, I was cool, right? No big things to do there. Like I never really had the scope of things. I was good about as far as like where I was a regular at quite a few bars, so the bartenders knew me pretty well, and I never had to be cut off necessarily. They would just kind of have to give the hey. Might want to close it up, maybe. Okay, I'm not gonna fight you on that one because then that's where like the embarrassment kind of sets in, and it's kind of like,
because even when I was at my highest peak of drinking, I still didn't want to necessarily embarrass myself on purpose. So if somebody said, Bill, you're taking it a little too far, okay, trust you, I would just go to the next bar.
Right, because misery loves company. Is that if you surround yourself with people that are like you, then no one's going to call you out on your bullshits. Because that's even the worst too. Is that you can't, as a drunk, ever tell somebody else that their drinking's out of control because they're just going to point it right back at you. Who are you to say this to me?
And I mean, the other part of it is I would just say, I don't remember doing that. Legitimately, I didn't. I don't remember, but it was a way of me deflecting what I should have taken. Like you have to own it.
Right.
And I wasn't necessarily, because I just go, I don't remember. And I didn't, but doesn't mean you can't take responsibility, right?
Yeah, no, but it's honestly, every now that I'm going with it, I mean, as let's say, is that I'm like kind of the way as an athlete, people that people that play professional sports, they have been involved in it from a very, very early age, and they go on, and then eventually the sport, it's time to call it quits. And that's kind of how it was for me. I mean, I was somebody that started in high school, which, I guess I would say growing up in Canada, is that a big party culture amongst?
I mean, I think I was close to 30-year drinker, and I literally quit cold turkey. I just, in my mind, I said, I'm not going to drink anymore. And I didn't, I haven't. And I'm stubborn that way. If I don't want to do something, I haven't had a Coca-Cola since November of 2003.
Okay, that's honestly probably healthier than not drinking.
Because in November 2003, I had a bleeding ulcer.
Okay,
and I had to be taken off onto the ambulance. And one of the things the doctor said to me was, caffeine and Coca-Cola aggravates your stomach. And so it wasn't a weight loss thing or anything. It was, I didn't want to give myself any excuse to have it flare up again. So I don't drink coffee. I've never liked the taste. I don't drink coffee. I don't drink Coke, and I've even stopped drinking dark tea. I will drink green tea. I love green tea, but even the dark tea, I'm at an age now where I'm like, a piece of bread gives me heartburn. So, even when I was in university, my buddy, when I was 19 years old, would say, Bill, crackers should not give you heartburn. So I don't like my getting up in the morning. I get up by having a shower. I shower every morning, and the hot water is what gets me up, not the coffee.
Coffee became my, I always liked it, but it became the crutch that I walked on heavily, where I just like I like the straight whiskey. I love that bite that you get on a shot of whiskey. So now a nice, robust, strong cup of coffee kind of still gives that to me, but I need to kind of even get off the caffeine aspect of it, because what happens is that, still the addictive personalities. I probably drink too much coffee, and then all of a sudden I'm just anxiety riddled and just, jittery, and, probably.
What I drink a lot of is the energy drinks, but I don't drink, rarely do I drink a whole can at once. Like a tall boy can might last me 3 days. And I just put a little bit in my drink as I go.
And that's really all you need. I mean, I always, my joke I used to make is going, how much cocaine exactly were people doing before the invention of energy drinks? Because that's just,
there was always, you know what it was, at least growing up around our way, we had a product called Jolt Cola.
I remember Jolt Cola.
Jolt Cola. And it was the most caffeinated stuff you could get at your corner store under the age of 18. It was.
They even came out with a grape one and it was called White Lightning, because it was a clear, but it was a grape soda there. And I used to play Sandlot football, and I was a heavier set kid at the time, so they actually nicknamed me Wide Lightning at once upon a time. But I remembered even thinking, well, before when, the signs were there, I probably should have quit drinking before. But there was don't ever touch Bang if you can avoid that possibly.
Well, no, I have, what's even funny is when I used to go to the States, like every summer, is I would buy, last time I went down, I bought a dozen energy drinks, because in Canada, they cap the caffeine at 180 milligrams.
Bang is 300.
In the States, it's 300. So if I drink half 350 mil, whatever, it goes straight like, whew. So I can't drink a whole can of US Energy. I just can't do it.
They should really regulate that one a little bit more too. Because here's the thing too, we don't even have enough long-term research as to what these things are going to do to you necessarily. Because I don't think that Red Bull didn't come to be until probably in the early 2000s. That was kind of the original. They kind of
developed it. They developed it over in Japan and in the East, and it then eventually made its way over. And I think it was originally made for workers to be able to, do their work on the factory line to give them the energy.
They're really what they are is they're pre-workout drinks.
Yeah.
But Bang, when that came along, so Bang, they did a great marketing and everything, all the hot girls on all the Instagrams and all that stuff like that. And I never really paid attention to caffeine content. So when I was in my party days, I would, stay out till last call, which was 2:00, go home, get a couple hours of drunken sleep, which by the way is like less like I can function pretty well on like 6 hours of sleep now, because I'm used to.
I was going to say, give me 5 and I'm fine.
Because I used to function on 5 drunken sleep, which is really like 3.
Yeah, it was like an hour and a half.
So there was a gas station next to the place I worked at. I would grab 2. They had 2 for $3 or whatever they were for the Bangs. I would grab those. I would take one and I would just chug one from top to bottom. And then the other one I would have at my desk, and I would just kind of casually sip on that to kind of keep things going throughout the day. By the end of the day, I'd be dry heaving. I'd have like the shakes. And I just assumed that it was because I had drank too much the night before and I was having alcohol withdrawal. And then I'd go out to the bar and have a couple drinks and I'd feel good again. And eventually this cycle was just kind of going on, where this was the first time I was like, I might need to get some help. I can't keep doing this. And then as I'm sitting there thinking about if I can ask work for some time off to, clean myself out a little bit, I happened to notice the side of the can of Bang, and I saw the 300 milligrams of caffeine that was in it. And I'm thinking to myself going, 300. I'm like, I don't know how much, but that's a lot. The original Red Bull, the 8.4 ounce can, was 80 milligrams.
And there's a reason why it's only this big. There's a reason why it was, it's basically 3 gulps, just enough to get you going for your workout.
Okay.
Like you don't need half a liter. Like you don't need that much.
But I did the math in my head, and I'm like, oh, no wonder you're feeling like shit all the time. You're basically drinking 8 Red Bulls throughout the course of your day at work. So then I was like, the way that my brain worked at that time was going, we'll cut out the Bangs and keep drinking. Everything will be fine,
Well, like when I was at university, Carleton University in Ottawa in 1993, 94, 95, I'm a procrastinator. So I would have to do a 30-page essay in a night because I just waited till the end and I had to get it. So if I pulled an all-nighter, I would buy a 2-liter jug of Pepsi, a big bag of M&Ms, go. Like there was no energy drink. It was strictly caffeine, right?
Yeah, no, we were very similar in a lot of regards. I also had that same problem of that. I actually would do my best work. The one time I remember doing a paper that I like had some free time and I was like, let's just get this one out of the way. I handed it in a week early to a professor. He gave it right back. He gave it right back to me the next day. He was like, what is this? He's like, this is the worst paper you've ever given me. You got more time, go fix it. And then I procrastinated it, held off to the last second because I'm just somebody that once if I have too much time to think, back to the paralysis by analysis thing, I'm going to screw myself up. But if I only have so much time, you just got to get stuff down there. It's okay. I might even not like this. We're going to go with it. We're just going to keep typing away. And we're just going to hammer away at this point for a while. And I would get that out of there. So yeah, no.
I can remember that we had a prof where you'd go to the door and he'd have the topics on the board on his door, and you scratch off which one you want. And by the time I got to there was only one topic left. I had to do an essay on the Crimean War, research it, write it, hand it in by 7 a.m. the next day. And so at 6:43, I'm sliding it under his door. So by the time he opens it up, he gets it.
Back before you emailed it over, you submitted
it.
When you actually had to do the physical, paper on that.
You physically had, and it was the word processor. So.
And how about this cheat code that kids have now? Talk to text. Are you fucking kidding me? What a cheat code that is.
Well, and the other thing is this, all these AI programs, Grammarly and all that. Well, they'll basically write the essay for you. I think the art of writing a letter and the art of writing an essay is taking a massive hit right now.
Oh, for sure. I mean, where I used to struggle with the most is that if I say I had to do a couple pages, I would probably spend more than half of the time on the introduction. Yeah, the introduction, if you write properly, is going to outline exactly what is about to take place.
And then it's just regurgitate.
Right.
With a little bit of opinion.
Introduce the theme and then expound upon it, in the body of it through each little paragraph. And then your conclusion is basically just repeating your intro, more or less.
My only cheat code writing an essay was find a quote that takes up half a page.
Oh, yeah, I was really good with those ones.
According to Dr. Mortimer at Harvard University, the Crimean War was and then half a page was done,
And then and then just kind of dissect the actual quote a little bit, kind of refer back to it a little. Yeah, anything you can do.
Okay, that used up 150 words. That's awesome.
But I mean, yeah, no, but back that's kind of all is that now people don't know how to write, and they also, I mean, the idea that you and I always like to say, so I work in sales right now, and I feel like that, it's to an extent I can at least buy myself a little bit more time as being marketable, is that I can at least still talk to people. The next generation below me, they can't talk to people quite as well. But as I'm finding out right now in sales is that I have a hard time selling to younger people because I approach them and I've got the person, and they're like bombarded, and they hate salespeople.
It's funny that you're in sales. After I got out of my, I got an honors BA. And of course, the first job I take is direct sales. So I walked the streets with the certificates and knocked on 100 doors a day and would make $7 off each one I sold.
That's real sales.
That is, if you were shy, you made no money.
Yep.
So you literally had to, and the amount of people of wild things I saw knocking on doors is, I've seen people in various stages of dress, undress, and in conditions you really don't need to see. But it forced the introvert to be an extrovert. Like it forced me. I didn't make a lot of money, but the life skill I got, I can still give you a sales pitch to people to buy golf courses, Blockbuster Video, restaurant coupons, AT&T, because there was no basic $7 an hour. You got what you made.
And that's been part of something, and I'm kind of in a crossroads of my life, is that I'm kind of not really enjoying sales as much anymore because we're being phased out in a lot of cases. And now it's ultimately it's selling the things that people don't need so much. And I am tired of giving those pitches. Like it's kind of like, I wonder with some of those bands that we talked about, do they ever they got to get tired of playing the same songs over and over again?
It's funny though. I heard an interview once with Tony Bennett, and they were asking, it was Larry King. Larry King goes, "Do you ever get tired of playing I Lost My Heart in San Francisco?" He goes, "Do you ever get tired of making love to the same woman every night?" You just do it.
But that's actually a good counterpoint to that one. But it's kind of one of those of that there are some times where I almost feel bad if somebody says yes to me, which means I must say, I having a conscience and ethics in sales is not exactly it's your biggest hindrance sometimes. But
I can remember going to Doris saying, "Look, I'm paying for my university." I wasn't, but it was an angle that would work.
Like right. I mean, well, to the extent is that, I mean, with selling is what I try to do is that I try to sell myself a little bit more. Why, hey, you're going to buy this. This is what I'm going to do with the commission versus what the other guy's going to do,
Okay. So here's a question for you. If you can envision your life in 5 years, what expectation would you realistically have for yourself?
Well, I am going to be happily married, hopefully, still. I mean, that's coming up. We're wedding soon. I don't think we have to worry about that one as much. Ideally, I'll be becoming a father at some point in that time. We'll have, that'll be the fun adventure there. I really do want to see myself as mentoring youngers in some sense. I've done what I want to do. I want to teach people because of the life I've lived. I want to show people because you always, you remember when you were younger, an older person would say something, you'd be like, "Oh, you're crazy. I'm not going to be like that when I'm older." Well, now I am that guy.
Yeah.
So kind of being the way where it doesn't come across as preachy or anything. Like I kind of like my story as being an influence to others is that, hey, you're going to go through some changes, but kind of walk people through life. I mean, I always liked when I was in roles at jobs where I was training the next batch of people, telling people that, hey, I made all of these mistakes so you don't have to make them. Okay.
Yeah.
So I kind of would like to see myself in some type of role of that. I mean, in an ideal world, I would like to be in some form of talking medium like this. I mean, I'm not saying necessarily the Scho-Zone, but I do like to share my thoughts on things. And I do I don't have one thing I like to marry myself to. That's what some kind of, the scary thing is I'm getting into new jobs right now, or the idea of looking at, what I want to do beyond sales is I haven't become an expert on anything. So to get the paychecks that you want to do, you have to be an expert on something. And I'll give you the same answer that I gave to my high school guidance counselor, which I've still had. I just want to be me. I want to be my true self. I got a little bit of that out of sales, but as me, I'm never going to be a top sales guy because I'm too much of being myself. I'm not trying to be the best salesperson. I'm trying to be the best version of me. And when I can break through with people and build those connections, I'm able to still close the deals in those cases. But yeah, I'm kind of something along there. And I mean, trust me, it's a question that keeps me up at night. I'm glad you asked it to me, and maybe I can listen to this back and hopefully form an answer for it.
Yeah. See, I'm at the point now where at the end of this school year, it'll be 6 more years, and then I can retire with full pension.
Okay.
And so I can retire at full pension at the age of 57. And it's funny you say, you want a job where you can be yourself and feel yourself. I in my job, I've found myself, I'm very disillusioned with education right now. I think it's a noble profession, but it's not the job I got into 22 years ago.
I will say that when I drank, 2 professions that I noticed were some of my biggest running mates in the bar were lawyers and teachers. And my theory on this one was, they got into those jobs for all the right reasons. They wanted to make a difference. And then they found out that the system was so stacked against them making a difference. Is there any truth to that?
Not only is the system stacked against you, the expectation of workers and the workplace itself has dramatically changed. So the atmosphere, the younger generation of the expectations in the workplace, the rules, and the things of the professional nature, I feel myself, I can't be myself at work anymore.
I literally am such a shell of myself. I feel bad. I mean, I'm still in a sales environment. I feel bad when some of my coworkers see me communicating with a complete stranger that I just met a half an hour ago in a way that I'll never talk to them.
Well, yeah, and like you used to be able to joke around and have fun in the staff room. Now, I am very careful who I talk to because HR will get a complaint.
Right. It's always, there's, something. And I don't know what it's like necessarily in Canada versus America right now, but has it become very liberal, I guess I would say, in the education? Is it kind of taking on that,
Well, no, I would say that it's becoming more conservative.
Okay. And the Canadian aspect of it.
Yeah. Much more conservative. And, like, it's funny. We were talking about, what your classroom was like when you were a kid versus, what it is now. There was a day when I'd have all the shelves full of textbooks. Nowadays, they don't give the kids any textbooks. Nowadays, it's on the teacher to prepare the lesson, throw in the software, and I can't say turn to page 36 and do 1 to 14. There is no page 36. So,
go on.
Yep.
Well, no. So, I kind of look at too is I feel like that they put too much emphasis on teachers now. Where I remember the classroom was the classroom, what happened during school, but I do remember there being times where my parents were just as much a part of my education as my teacher was, and now it's where our parents seem to want to complain about what their kids are because their teacher didn't make them perfect. And it's like they're dropping their end of the bargain. Now, granted, lifestyles have changed where parents maybe aren't as allowed to be as much, whether it be, because everyone works now or, they work a second job, but it's like people don't even see their kids anymore almost. And it's just like they just hope that they drop them off there and then, hey, turn them into a perfect human being. And then they aren't happy with the results.
And the other aspect to it is, though, that I'm also finding is the parent voice, if they make enough noise, gets heard more than it used to.
Yeah, now they have more platforms to do it.
The more platforms, but even still, like I'm finding what's tough for me was, like you think you're doing your job well, but apparently you're not because parents are, and it's the same with you. You're probably getting calls about this, that, and the other, about something that's kind of out of your, you thought you're doing something right, and it turns out, oh, you really weren't. Oh, I only did it.
And it's almost like, and I'm kind of the sports mentality. I am not, you can tell me when I'm doing something wrong. Don't wait till it's at the last possible moments, where I'm going to assume that no news is good news for the most time. Not the okay, well, hey, we've got to talk to you about this. Well, you should have told me 6 weeks ago when the problem started.
Like if I could do it back 25 years, I wouldn't have got into teaching.
That's it. And something that's pained me is that, I would love to be, until I have kids of my own, but even the way that things are going is that I always want to be involved in sports at some realm. My days of playing are over, but I still have that competitive juice and, the lessons that I learned in playing sports and the different games I played, the wisdom I could feel like I could share with that one or the experiences. And those are all gone now.
Yeah. I've always said that if I didn't get into teaching, I would have gone into, I would love to have been a writer for for somebody that follows a team.
Yeah.
Could be the Bills beat writer or the Blue Jays beat writer. Like that would have been fun to me.
Yeah, no, the worst thing is that when coming out of college is that I actually wanted to, this is before podcast was thing, I wanted to get into radio. And when I talked to people about getting into radio, all they said was don't do it because it was dying. And we didn't know that this whole other form was going on there. So I would discourage that because ultimately, had to earn a paycheck and finding out I wasn't going to make much money wasn't going to be a big to-do thing. But
it's funny. I was watching a movie yesterday and it was a kid throwing papers. He was a paper boy. And I'm sitting there going, do they have paper boys anymore?
Okay. That was my first job ever. Trying to explain that job to somebody in present tenses where basically this was the job. I was 10 years old. I would wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning and go wandering around the neighborhood by myself. And then every Thursday I would go shake people down for money.
Yeah.
That was the gig. I remember having a college student when I was graduated from college, but I was still working in the same job that I was when I was in college. I managed the gas station. I remember a kid reading the first page of an article and going, I wonder what happens in the rest of the article. How do I finish this? And I was like, okay, you see how that's section B? Okay, you're on B1. Where does it say in the bottom? Go to B6. Like I had to teach this kid how to fucking read a newspaper. It blew my mind.
Well, and the other thing is with newspapers is you pick one up, like it's half the size they used to be.
Now it's mostly advertising.
like in my neck of the woods, the Toronto Star was the be all and end all newspaper, and it was a full broadsheet, and you got your editorials and your news and your sports, your entertainment, your motor, or whatever. Nowadays, it might be a centimeter high, half an inch, and that's on a Saturday.
Well, it just, I mean, if you're going to go deeper on this one, the art of journalism has been completely gone. I mean, the job is supposed to be, you tell us what happened, I decide what I feel about it. Now it's all written from an opinion, space, it seems like. At least that's the most of the journal stuff I read.
This is where I think technology actually helps, because back in the day, at least from the sporting side, if you were covering the Toronto Blue Jays, you would be given access to the locker room and to certain information. And if it wasn't the most positive, you didn't tell it. So the star catcher got drunk the night before, or the starting pitcher beat somebody in a bar fight. The journalists used to sweep that under the rug, whereas nowadays you'll get exposed for it.
Yes.
And so, I always say technology sometimes can help. And in that sense, the sensibilities have, Harvey Weinstein, would he have been exposed 30 years ago? Everybody knew, but nobody said.
Right.
Or would the Diddy thing have come out in 1978? So I think there are some ways that we've gone forward, but other ways we need to go backwards.
Yeah, no, that is a good point with that one, is that we are, and that's kind of always the thing. I always think of, I remember a great lesson I actually got. Like here's the thing, is that there are certain teachers that I will still, maybe I didn't like, but if somebody is on a podcast 25 years later, bringing up something that they taught to you, I always remember one teacher went through the song "We Didn't Start the Fire" by Billy Joel. And the point of that song is that these things have always been happening. Maybe in some cases, people want to say that we're living in the worst times or like that. No, we're just more aware of it. This stuff has been always been going on. We're just now coming to light. I mean, we used to have musicians that they were married. I mean, Seinfeld was dating a 17-year-old girl at one point in time, where it was like, oh, okay, whatever, and then now it's like, whoa, wait a second. I mean, wasn't Mick Jagger married to like a 13-year-old at one point in time or something?
Well, Mick Jagger just got engaged to a 34-year-old.
Which is like,
he's 81, I think. Is he 82? But I mean, it's crazy the way the world was versus the way it is, and you got to go with the times. Like you just have to adapt. But like sometimes I find it swings so far one way or the other, depending on who's on power or whatever the social media trend is or whatever, that you got to catch your breath.
Here's actually, and maybe we'll wrap up on this one because we are running almost into 2 hours now.
I was going to say, for Land of the Creeps, that's a third of the way through.
It sounds like you're an easy person to talk to. It's a good thing we didn't meet at a bar. We would be.
Oh shit, we'd be talking
We'd be closing the place down. That's for sure.
That's it. You'd be getting me drinking again.
But now what's actually started to happen, and especially with the arts a little bit, is that now when we're finding this stuff out about people, it's like we're not supposed to appreciate their work. And there is one guy, and there's a movie that escaped me when you asked me that question, but you're not allowed to appreciate Kevin Spacey anymore because of things that he did. Like I even started off by mentioning a Louis C.K. quote where it's like, oh, because he was affiliated with some less than savory events, now we almost can't appreciate him anymore. But it's like, I'm not still supposed to say that Usual Suspects isn't a great movie and Kevin Spacey isn't one of the best actors ever because he did some weird shit. I
was going to say our very last podcast we talked about if you were to, okay, and I can give you this, to give you the next time I come on. If you were to set up a movie studio or a movie theater for you and your buddies, pick 3 movies by the same director that you could sit and watch. And one of the ones I referenced Kaiser Soze.
Okay.
And we were comparing that one to a Herschel Gordon Lewis film. And anyways, it had been a while. Is Spacey still in the business?
I don't know that. I think the last I saw, no, I think he's been kind of blackballed out of it.
And did it turn out? Did he do what he was accused of, or is it just
well? Now it's the point is that once you have the accusation, you're guilty.
You're done.
We've gone to the opposite of that innocent until proven guilty. It's now guilty until proven innocent.
Now I hear that what's his name, Johnny Depp, he's bouncing back.
Again, that would be escaping me. I know that I went to watch, there was a documentary that they made about Spacey kind of going on, but there's just certain thing that's subject nature. Like I can't, watch, like I just can't, when it comes to the kids thing, I just can't, I can handle.
But like American Beauty is a good film.
American Beauty is a great film. I will also tell you it is one of the worst movies to ever watch on a flight. Because I actually made the mistake and I realized I think first off, you have this whole thing that's kind of going on of that I am the age of his character when I was on a flight watching this or like that. And I also have this weird thing of that I was incredibly attracted to Mina Savari when I was the age that movie came out. And now I'm like, oh my God, am I just turning into and I had to turn it up. And ultimately I'm thinking like no audio is playing on this one. But for anybody that's looking over at my screen right now, this is not a very flattering movie to be watching. So
and the irony of that film is that Kevin Spacey had a moralistic decision to make and he made the right one in that film. Whereas now he's being portrayed as going the other way. But
that's why he's a tremendous actor.
It goes back to a story I was telling somebody the other day. And when I was 10 years old, I remember my mom previewing Revenge of the Nerds before we watched it.
That movie you can't talk about anymore?
Well, that one between the sex scene in the outer space.
Yeah.
And the panty raid and just the way they portray nerds. And
Lamar Luttrell does not age well as a character.
The bullying and the homosexual end of it and the Asian stereotypes and
it checks all the boxes of what's wrong. But it's a hilarious movie.
But this is the difference. In 1984, my mom watched it. I was 10 and she goes, Bill, it's fine, watch. And so, full frontal female nudity, racist jokes, jokes about drinking and people of color. You roll with it. And right. Nowadays, you could not make Revenge of the Nerds. You could not make National Lampoon's Vacation. You could not make Caddyshack. Like, you couldn't make these films anymore.
Well, and this has always been the rule I've had, because I even use myself with this one. I am not above someone making fun of me as long as it's funny.
As long as, it's going to be a little irreverent, but as long as you're not kicking me in the nuts, it's fine, whatever,
Right, and that's the thing is that, and that's, I remember actually I got, back to American Psycho, I got my first A I ever got in college. We had to argue because when American Psycho, the book came out, there were people that never wanted that book to ever see the light of day. And one of the arguments for why it was okay for that book is that, is how can we say what future arbiters of taste are going to feel about this one? So now we do the whole thing where I hate the idea where everyone wants to go re-legislate things. Like I've had this, like where when, with a famous athlete, they'll go back and they'll find his Twitter account from when he was in high school. And he made a homophobic joke, and now so we got to, burn him down. We got to take them all down. And it's like, look, was it good? No, but that was kind of status quo at the time. It was part of the thing. You watch again, you don't watch TV shows, but there are so many shows that I used to watch from the early 2000s where, I even think of one of the best parts of the movie, The 40-Year-Old Virgin. You know how I know you're gay? You know how I know you're gay? And that was a funny, accepted thing. And now the actors that are in that scene, it's almost like they just want to forget it ever happened.
Yeah. And it's not like it's a multi-generational away. It was one generation. That's all it was. To me, the 40-Year-Old Virgin, I remember seeing it in the theater. Like it wasn't that long ago,
Right. But that's the other thing is that it actually is, it's like when we get older, like I'll see where something is like, it's the 25th anniversary of this. I'm like, that wasn't 25. Oh my God, it was 2000. Shit, that was 25 years ago.
Yeah, that really was 25 years ago.
I've been watching, there's some documentaries on Netflix and Hulu. I was watching the Oklahoma City bombing and 9/11, and I'm watching these through these grainy camera videos that they're showing at the time. And I was like, I remember watching those when that was like good production quality.
Well, I don't mean to sound like the old guy because I'm all for current things are cool. But when I was teaching now, like September 11th, for the Canadians, it doesn't hit the same. But there's nobody in the class that had any recollection. Like they weren't old enough, but their parents didn't talk. Like I don't even bring up. Do you remember like the name Saddam Hussein to them? You might as well be talking about a video game character. Like,
but like even at the time, I just kind of think about that happening is that we had literally just CNN was our news source in that one. Like I can only imagine Twitter or social media, what that would be like during a 9/11. Where I remember us being on going home from school and going on to AOL Instant Messenger. That was what we had at the time, and like people being like, "What's going on right now?" I don't know.
Well, I remember being in high school when Waco happened.
Okay.
David Koresh and the FBI when they burned it all down, and we would come home from. I was in grade 11, I think grade 11. I'd come home and just see, oh shit, those look like they're the house is on fire. But like nowadays, that would be. I mean, it was a big deal. Don't get me wrong, it was a big deal, but it would be 12 times what it was now. Or
right,
I was going to say, I remember being
at home. Partisan. It would become,
yeah.
9/11. I don't remember. I remember the one thing is that 9/11 may have been the last time in America that we were all united.
I can remember sitting in high school. I was in grade 12, maybe, when the Rodney King beating.
Okay.
And then we had discussions about it. And to a certain point, we didn't get it because, one, we're not mature enough. I mean, we were like 17, but we don't have those racializations as much in Canada as we do with you guys, as you guys do.
Oh, I remember a point in time thinking everything was okay, and then all of a sudden it wasn't. And that was actually the movie American History X, if you remember that movie with Edward Norton. They do the flashbacks to the whole thing, where the conversation at the dinner table where he gets into it with the guy that's dating his mother and everything. And I remembered when we had the whole incident happen with the kid in Ferguson, St. Louis, Michael Brown. And I was just kind of like, whoa, not much has changed, but it has. It's weird now. And now we have people where the social media is just really becoming one of the worst things because now people are just out there just to agitate just because it pays. I guarantee most people, I really feel like, don't believe half the shit they put out there.
Well, it's funny because being a sports guy, on my last podcast that just got released today, I did a mock draft for the NFL draft in 2025. I'm a sports nerd.
I'm a sports nerd too, actually. And I didn't even talk about any sports, actually.
No. And it's funny, like, I've been watching the NFL draft ever since whenever, when Green Bay passed on Barry Sanders and chose Tony Mandrich, I can remember that happening. But they were talking about the, what's his name? Jeff Fisher, when he was head coach of the Titans when they were in Houston.
Yep. The Oilers then, yeah, but yeah.
What was it? I think we're going back 10, 12 years. Michael Sam got drafted.
Oh, that was when he was with the Rams. Yes.
Oh, Rams. Oh, sorry, Rams. Yeah, I think they had just moved.
Well, the Rams. So he was with two franchises that moved, but the Rams were in St. Louis at the time. Yeah. They were always the St. Louis Rams, or they were Los Angeles, and they went to St. Louis, and they went back to Los Angeles. Which I'm a St. Louis Cardinals fan. Really, really sore subject with the St. Louis people because they basically did the movie Major League. They basically intentionally tanked the franchise to be able to move it back to LA. But sorry.
And so what happened was Michael Sam was the defensive player of the year in the SEC. Huge conference. All your big schools play there. Every draft Nick is watching, general manager scouts. Michael Sam was the best in the conference. And because he was openly gay, he didn't get picked until the 7th round, and they had to hold their breath to draft him in the 7th round.
And I believe that they were also instructed to pick him too. Was the story?
Well, it was Jeff Fisher, the coach, that said we're taking him. He was too big a talent in the 7th round not to take, and it was a big to do. Like there were teams that wouldn't get near the player. Nowadays, I don't care if you're gay, homosexual, transsexual, Asian, African. If you can throw the ball, you're getting drafted.
I mean, well, it's funny the moral police of the NFL because we will have some of the worst human beings out there that literally we know what they have done, and can they play? Like, I mean, I always think of Greg Hardy. Okay, Greg Hardy, the guy that was beat his wife horribly or whatnot, or beat his girlfriend. And then he started fighting. He's an MMA fighter now. If you do something that nobody else can do, we'll still find a spot on the field for you. Tyreek Hill, another piece of shit. No problem saying it. He's been literally choked his pregnant girlfriend in college. can make his way there. I mean, it's also now what we can sweep under the rug. Like everyone wants to think with Antonio Brown that he just got crazy after Vontaze Burfict let him up. Really? You think that guy, that was when the problem started? That the reason that a guy of that talent went to fucking Central Michigan and wasn't drafted till the 6th round? You think that maybe there was some things going on behind the scenes they swept under the rug a little bit? I mean, all of these guys, they always say don't meet your heroes for a reason. A lot of these guys, not the best.
But like if I was the GM of, I'm a Packer fan. So if I was Ron Wolf in Montreal, in Green Bay, not Ron Wolf, sorry. Yeah. I would have no problem taking a gay guy first. I don't care. Can he block? Can he open up a hole for the running back? Can he intercept 3rd and 18? I don't give a shit what your sexuality is.
Now, this was the funny one. This one I never had an issue with. I mean, because there was the one player that came out recently, not Crosby, but anyways, there was a guy. He was on the Bucs, and he was on the Raiders. Nobody really had an issue with him. He could still play. The thing was that actually, and this is where I can kind of go, is that I never had an issue with Michael Sam's sexuality or whatever. But realistically, he was inheriting a lot of stats because Aldon Smith was on the other side of him, and Aldon Smith was actually the real baller in that case. And if Michael Sam could have gotten after the quarterback, no one would have cared if he even bent the quarterback over when he got him down the ground. He never made it clicked at the pro level.
Well, the other thing would be that would bother me would be
still falling to the 6th or 7th round was egregious, I would say. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing that would bother me would be if somebody got cut due to lack of production, which happens all the time. A linebacker, a power forward, a centerman, whatever. But if they blame it on because of their race or because of their sexuality, no, I don't care who you are. You can't hit the open shot. That's why I'm cutting you.
So there is the whole thing of that. There are quite a few, because I mean, I follow sports a lot, and I think in baseball they've said like there are known guys who are out, but the team, their teammates know and don't care. They just don't want it to be something they have to answer questions about.
Yeah. They don't want, like as I said, I'm a Green Bay Packer fan. Green Bay generally takes the moral high road with players. They only want the high character guys. And that's for most teams. But there are some teams that will take a chance on a guy. He may be an asshole, but he can run 4.32 and catch a ball, So there's that. Can we control him, or can we change him, or can we at least get him to not, cause some kind of mischief that'll get him charged? And while he's with us,
is it worth the backlash? I mean, famously right now now it's one of these crazy things of that he did fall off, but Deshaun Watson, I mean, he was one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. And then we had all these things happen. The Browns were willing to do away with that one, but apparently when you don't play football for a year and a half, you kind of lose your game a little bit. And now he's just going to be completely out of the league. And no, you do have that, but
the other one that's the example right now is Trevor Bauer.
Trevor Bauer is a real delicate one as far as, my thing is that he just was never really a likable guy. I mean, I know baseball is my big to-do sport. He had things. I mean, he had a rap song where he was talking shit about his catcher in Arizona. He's always been a jerk. Well, and then now it just makes it a lot easier to not like him. And we still don't. I mean, now there is the one suit that we have kind of found the evidence that there was always something a little off with that whole thing, but he does have other allegations. But it is wild and crazy to me that is going to keep him completely out of baseball altogether. Where here's one that's going to come up pretty soon right now. Henry Ruggs, the guy for
Henry Ruggs. I was thinking about him.
He's going to be out of jail in a year.
Is he about 30?
No, Henry, that was only a couple, it was only a few years ago.
I'm just wondering, will he get a shot again? Will somebody take it? Because even before he got put to jail, there was about a year or two where he was sitting out there and nobody touched him.
No, Henry Ruggs went right to jail.
Oh, did he go right from the NFL to jail?
He went to he was in the NFL.
He was in the NFL, and the Raiders released
somebody in a drunk driving accident. But I mean, Dante Stallworth killed somebody in a drunk driving accident. He got another chance. I mean, as long as if you can still play, you can still do something. If he can still now, the chances of him coming out of jail and still running a 4.340 probably not going to be so high. But if he can, somebody be willing to do a redemption story on him a little bit. I mean, again, Tyreek Hill it's still pretty sought after. He's got some hairy stuff there. Again, the Greg Hardy I'll bring up. If you can play, especially in that sport, I feel like you can get away with a little bit more.
But I mean, it goes back a while, because I don't know if you remember the hockey player Craig McTavish.
Yes, yeah, the last
player with
McTavish, he was the last player that he was grandfathered into not wearing a helmet, which is fucking absolutely what a psycho.
Yeah, well, yeah, he was. If you signed a contract before 79, and he lasted, I think, until about 1991, 92, something like that. But he was accused of and found guilty of vehicular homicide in his early 20s. But I never researched back what happened, if it was an accident, if he got let off, whatever. He ended up playing 15 years. So, I mean, it has happened.
Leonard Little was an all-pro defensive end for the Rams there. He killed somebody drinking and driving, and I think he got out of it somehow, but he still ended up, playing.
The singer James Brown. I think James Brown killed somebody back in the 50s.
Oh, one of my favorite movies of all time, actually, or just not favorite, but it's just one I'd like to bring up, but is the movie Airheads.
Oh God, yeah.
And there's the line where they're talking about when they want him to negotiate, and Judd Nelson's playing the lawyer, and he's like, Vince Neil killed a guy and he only did 30 days. That's actually a line that happened at one point in time, where there is a weird thing, is that you used to get away with anything because you were good at what you did, or you were rich and famous. Now it's kind of almost like you're held to you're almost double fucked if you're a famous person that does something wrong.
But then it goes back to my conversation earlier about journalistic integrity. And teams covering for the drunk, and teams covering for the wife beater. Oh. Nowadays, you're thrown out there. The team wants nothing to do with you.
I mean, put it this way. O.J. Simpson, it wasn't until he actually murdered his wife, but he was still in the Bills' Ring of Honor when it was known he was a wife beater.
Well, and the other thing about O.J. is you could strip his endorsements. You can strip... he no longer worked as an actor. He no longer worked as a commentator. Legally, you cannot take away his pension. His pension is his. He earned that pension. He's
gone now, but I mean, OJ said, that's one of the weird things. And if you want to get into the, conversations, is that you can't even talk about OJ Simpson as being one of the best football players ever anymore.
He was a brilliant football player.
He's one of the best. And honestly, I'm going to end it on this one. Okay. Here's a hilarious behind the scenes thing. Did you know that O.J. Simpson, they originally wanted to cast as the Terminator? Okay. They didn't think he was believable in that character. And they didn't like the optics of a black man in 1980 stalking and trying to kill a white woman. Here's sweet irony.
Here's, do you know who they had playing the Predator opposite Schwarzenegger when they first started filming it?
No, I don't.
Jean-Claude Van Damme.
Oh, that's right. I think I just heard that recently, actually.
Yeah, Jean-Claude Van Damme was the Terminator, and then whatever. Do you know who they had as Marty McFly in?
Eric Stoltz.
It was right.
They had to stop the movie. Have you ever seen the clips of it? It looks like it's a different movie.
Yeah, well, they hired him, and I guess, and they were about a third of the way through. Like, they weren't just, but it just wasn't working or whatever.
And those are some of the great what ifs on there, which, Bill, it's been a pleasure chatting with you, man. And we should do this again some other time.
Sure, absolutely. Right now, I'm so excited. The Montreal Canadiens have made the playoffs for the first time in 4 years. They've made it on the last day of the season. I'm a Habs fan, so Lane Hudson and Ivan Demidov and Nick Suzuki, they're all Slavkovsky's doing great. I'm excited. If anybody wants to listen to me, music, movies, sports, and stuff on all your podcatchers, Land of the Creeps on all your podcatchers, send me a message. Ryan, I'll come on anytime you want me to.
Absolutely, man. Appreciate it. Now we know each other. Who knows? Yeah, making this a frequent thing, and sounds like that we're just getting warmed up here, but I have some things I need to tend to. So it was a pleasure getting acquainted with you, and we look forward to having you on again.
And ask your fiance what's going to be your meal.
We're doing a buffet kind of style thing. We're doing this as it's I don't want to say it's necessarily thrown together, but this has started off. It was going to be a civil ceremony and has kind of slowly turned into an actual wedding. So,
you're piecing it together as you go.
So put it this way, I mean, when we were looking at the menu at the place, again, she's from Kenya originally. I had to describe to her what half the things that the place is offering are.
Now, is Kenyan food the type of African food where it's communal, where everybody kind of eats off the plate?
I mean, they do. I noticed that the first time I ate like authentically with her, we did sit down on our knees. You don't use utensils. You use ugali is like your vessel.
Yeah.
But yeah, kind of like a lot of like stew type things. But I think it's damn good food. Or maybe she's just a really good cook, which is all the more reason to marry her.
Hey, you got a woman that can cook well. See, in our household, my wife cooks well, but I like cooking. It didn't get into why I watch cooking. I enjoy it. So
I'm starting to get into it myself too, because you gotta, it's the most basic thing a person can do for themselves. If a person can't cook for themselves, you're indirectly saying I can't take care of myself.
like my daughter's 10. I keep telling Ella, I say, Ella, by the time you get ready for university or whatever, you're going to know how to cook a meal. You're going to know how to, she's already, cuts vegetables, stirs the whatever. And she's been baking with me since she was 5. Like, it's just going to be second nature. Anyways, I've talked way too much, so I know.
No, it's all good. Basic life skills. It sounds like you're doing a good job there, my friend. So
I do my best. Yeah, let's do an episode where we either pick movies or musician, and we just kind of focus.
Absolutely. Maybe we make this a nice little collab. We got to get these American-Canadian relations.
That's it.
We got to set an example for the rest of us.
I mean, the whole thing is nobody dislikes Americans. Nobody dislikes Canadians. It's just the leadership on top that makes it difficult.
We were fucked either way is the way I look at it.
Yeah. Like I on my latest podcast I put out, I said, I'm not going to talk politics. I have voted left. I have voted right. I have voted center. But make your voice heard and vote.
Absolutely. So, all right, Bill, on that note, we will bid you farewell. So I'm just going to wrap this up and then I'll talk to you for a second off camera. All right. That was a wonderful conversation in the beginning of a beautiful friendship with our guest, Bill Van Veghel. So be sure to check out his podcast. If you like music, movies, sports, and stuff, that's the name of the podcast to go for you. And if you're a real big, huge horror fan, Land of the Creeps, if you have a lot of time to kill at work, that's the one to go for you. Everybody, it was a wonderful time on the Scho-Zone tonight. Take it easy. We'll see you on next episode.